Yeah. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We'll call to order the Select Board meeting of August 17th to order. It's 5:30. We have one change to the agenda. It is in Citizen Department Committee request number 2, the Cisco Brewery and Bartlett's Farm request for an extension of hours for music is August 24th, not August 23rd as it's written in the agenda. That's one change to the agenda. Announcements, Libby?
Thank you. First off, we've got 2022 committee vacancies, round 3. We have vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 2 seats, Finance Committee, 1 seat, Tree Advisory Committee, 2 seats. Those applicants' names will be read aloud at the board meetings of September 7th and September 14th. The applicants can have an opportunity to introduce themselves at the board's meeting on September 21st, and appointments will be made for those groups at that time. We have vacancies on the short-term rental work group, and the timeline on that is that the deadline for submitting applications for that work group is August 26th at noon. The names of applicants will be read aloud at the board meetings again on September 7th and September 14th, and the meeting where applicants can introduce themselves and review their applications and committee appointments will be made on September 21st. And we have a request for September to be declared Climate Change Awareness Month. And I think that Mary Longacre, who is on remote, will read a proclamation. And Mary, if you want to say anything else about it.
Thank you very much, Libby. The Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee and Acclimate are submitting for the Select Board's approval a proclamation to declare September 2022 as Climate Change Awareness Month for Nantucket. Whereas the town of Nantucket recognizes that climate change and rising sea levels pose a significant and increasing threat to Nantucket as outlined in various state and federal scenarios. And whereas the Select Board formed the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee in part to assist with obtaining community feedback on climate change and sea level rise. And whereas in 2022, the Select Board endorsed the first Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan, and whereas the town of Nantucket, through a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, developed a resilient Nantucket toolkit for adapting historic resources for sea level rise, and whereas Acclimate Nantucket provides a platform for public-private partnership between community organizations and the town of Nantucket on issues of resilience and sustainability, and whereas the Acclimate partner organizations are hosting a series of educational events in September 2022 that will feature climate change topics. Now, jointly, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee and Acclimate call upon the Select Board to proclaim September 2022 Climate Change Awareness Month for the town of Nantucket. And there is a proclamation to be signed. I will read it. We, the Select Board of the town of Nantucket in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby officially proclaim the month of September 2022 as Climate Change Awareness Month, and do hereby encourage all residents to learn more about the threats of climate change and sea level rise and the planning efforts underway to increase community resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. There are no Select Board meetings on Wednesday, August 24th or Wednesday, August 31st. Back at it on Wednesday, September 7th. We do have one additional announcement that didn't make it onto the agenda. The Housing Director is going to make that for us.
Thank you, Tucker Holland. Just wanted to remind the community that we are having, the Select Board is sponsoring a housing workshop next Tuesday, August 23rd at noon in this room. It will be a hybrid meeting. You can attend by Zoom, but this is intended to cover the state of year-round housing in Nantucket, sort of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And we encourage everybody to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Is that it, Libby? Yep. Any select board announcements or comments to get started? Sure.
Hi, thanks for being here, everyone who's here in the room, on Zoom, watching in the community. As the newest select board member, I wanted to make a comment about public discourse and how that happens in our community. I ran for select board because I care about Nantucket and I want to look at the big picture and understand the best decisions for the community in the long term. It's not easy. It's complicated. I thought I knew a lot about how government works and what the constraints and limitations on this board and on town administration are in terms of how things get decided. I appreciate community engagement. I don't appreciate personal attacks on board members or town administration. When we disagree, I would hope we disagree with grace and respect for one another personally. I didn't sign up for this. It's very, very hard. I didn't sign up for personal attacks. I signed up for engagement and dialogue. It's very distressing. And I ask tonight when people speak that they retain a level of decorum and respect and not attack other people. And that's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Don or Matt? Thanks, Brooke. Okay, we're going to follow up comments from prior select board meetings. Before you go into that, Libby, Spruce came up and asked a good question of, because this is on the agenda, because we're going to respond to Spruce's comments from last week about shark policy, can he come up to, on public comment, and talk about something that is on the agenda? And I said, yes, you can, because it's on the agenda in these follow-up comments, but it's also just a response from a couple weeks ago. So I think we can, if somebody has a public comment on these follow-up comments, that is okay. Board members fine with that? Because otherwise we couldn't talk about a lot of things tonight. So I think does that make sense, everyone? No? Okay.
Okay, so the first item under follow-up comments is the status of Chapter 33, entitled Personnel Board of the Town Code. This is in response to comments that came up at the meeting of August 3rd. You gonna get that up, Maureen?
While we're trying to figure that out, this is just us reporting back from previous comments. I won't be taking any comments on what Libby is going through, but you can comment on public comment, which is the next item up.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. Just maybe go back up to the top. Yep. We have Labor Council on as well in case the board has any questions about this. So I won't read every single word of this, but there were several questions. The first is, I'm wondering if anyone can enlighten me as to where the town personnel board went. And we have a response to that. The personnel board was established under authority granted to the town by Mass General Law. The duties of that board were set out in Chapter 33 of the Town Code, which became effective in 1995. There are several duties of the board that are listed in the Town Code. In 1996, however, town government in Nantucket substantially changed with the passage of the town charter approved by voters at town meeting. The charter, which is actually state law, is codified as Chapter 289 of the Acts of 1996. It created the position of town manager and transferred the functions previously performed by the personnel board to the town manager. The charter sets out the duties of the town manager in section 4.2, which is available on the town website. During the course of 2011 and 2012, the town undertook a comprehensive review of the personnel function given to the town manager by the charter. That review led to the preparation and presentation to the select board of a comprehensive personnel policy. That policy was adopted by the board on February 20th, 2013, and it was the subject of an open and public discussion. No issues were raised at that time regarding the existence of the personnel board, and the policy was adopted by the board. That is available on the town website. The policy was followed in every respect during the fire chief search process. Second question was, in fact, it was updated as recently as 2020, which makes it seem it was still a valid section of the town bylaws in 2020, so where is it? The entire town code was updated in 2020 to change the title of the select board from Board of Selectmen as authorized by town meeting. That was what the change was. Third question, with all the happenings of the past few weeks regarding our fire chief search, one would think this would be a perfect avenue for a personnel board to step in and assert their oversight into such a process. That's not really a question, but we do have a response. The personnel board, as it existed in 1995, would not have had direct oversight responsibility regarding the hiring of a fire chief, and in 1985 would not have had the lawful ability to step in and effect a process conducted according to procedures set out at the beginning of the process. The process was followed this year in 2022 in conformance with generally accepted management principles and resulted in the presentation of 3 highly qualified external candidates. A personnel board, even if it had existed, would have had no authority to intervene in the selection process. Fourth question. So if this board still exists, when was the last time a vacancy post was published? And as noted, it no longer exists, so there are no vacancies. Fifth question, if it was dissolved, who made that decision and why? Were the responsibilities absorbed into town departments without the community or public getting to have a say about it? If it is in fact defunct, who has taken on those responsibilities? As noted in the prior responses, the decision to place the duty regarding town personnel with the town manager was made by voters at town meeting by adopting the charter. 6, who played that role in the fire chief search and application review? Who made that decision? The town manager put in place a fire chief search committee. The committee has acted in accordance with the charter and state law and town policy and generally accepted best practices. Last question, how does a bylaw change? If this bylaw was changed, why does it remain active in our town bylaws? A bylaw may be changed by town meeting only. There are several bylaws contained within the town code which most likely need to be updated and or removed due to the existence of the charter, which has superseded these bylaws, and that's a big project. Okay, next, I have a statement to read about the search process. And it's on the screen, and it's also online. The appointment process for department heads within town administration is outlined in the town charter. A solid hiring process was followed for the fire chief position earlier this year. The town engaged a highly regarded professional search firm to lead the search effort, which yielded several impressive candidates. To be considered finalists for the position, candidates had to meet or exceed many stringent prerequisites, such as a minimum of 15 years of professional experience in an organized fire department, with at least 5 years of experience in a command capacity, along with extensive fire service administration and leadership experience. A fundamental responsibility of municipal government leaders is to make informed, thorough decisions to ensure public safety for the community and its citizens. We do not take this responsibility lightly on Nantucket. Again, as town leaders, we have an obligation to provide efficient and effective public safety. The hiring process was impartial and rigorous and designed to attract the best and most qualified fire service professionals. I'm pleased that Michael Cranston, former chief of the Portsmouth, Rhode Island Fire Department, was offered and has accepted the position and has signed a contract to lead the Nantucket Fire Department. Chief Cranston will be joining a team of fire service professionals who so courageously fought last month's Veranda House blaze, the largest fire on the island in decades. We are grateful to each member of the department for their service to the community. I'm also confident that under the leadership and guidance of Chief Cranston, a comprehensive succession plan will be developed. positioning our firefighters to assume future leadership roles within the department. Unfortunately, the divisive and mean-spirited tone that has dominated national political conversation in recent years has finally made it to the shores of Nantucket. It has overshadowed the value and importance of the hiring process and promoted a non-productive and misleading narrative. I'd like to believe Nantucket is better than this. It is imperative that we all work together amicably and cooperatively for the common good of our community. I am confident that we can move beyond the misinformation and once again engage in productive dialogue. We're grateful that the local fire union 2509 embraces language in its contract that states as its purpose, quote, to promote harmonious relations between the town and the union, end quote. I know many Islanders will be joining us I know that many Islanders will join us in moving our community forward and welcome Chief Cranston to Nantucket this fall. The second follow-up item regards fire department staffing, compensation, and equipment. The public comment was that we are understaffed, underpaid, and under-equipped. We go years without offers or offers of zero during town negotiations. So we have a couple of responses to this. With regard to staffing, in 2018, town administration undertook a town-wide, excluding school, airport, and water, staffing study. There were several recommendations pertaining to the fire department. Maureen, can you go down a bit? Just want to show the board and the public what that looks like. I think it's down further. So keep going down. Keep going. Sorry, keep going. Okay, there we go. Yeah, thanks. So there were several recommendations, and people can certainly go online to review this. The items noted in green have been completed. The items that have a yellow triangle are in progress, and items with a red hexagon, I guess that is, have not begun yet for a variety of reasons, which probably relate to either union negotiations, budgeting, or we just haven't gotten there yet. Okay, can you just go back up to the top of that again, please? Thank you. Staffing for the department will undergo a review with the new chief. Recruiting and retaining staff is challenging town-wide. Town administration has launched initiatives to address this, including the engagement of a consultant to assist with succession planning and a town employee housing assistance pilot program funded with $1 million from the 2022 annual town meeting. Compensation, we don't need to go into it, Maureen, I don't think, but it is part of this document that's on the town website, just go up a tad, which lists out what most recently has been improved between the union and the town with regard to their collective bargaining agreement. Can you go up a little bit? Thanks, don't just right there's good. We also have underway a compensation and classification study town-wide, excluding the school, which certainly includes the fire department. Equipment, we have developed a web page online that shows recent investments in the Nantucket Fire Department. If you could just click on that, please. That shows budgeted items, capital and otherwise, since fiscal 18. And again, people can feel free to go look at the town website on this. That's the follow-up for those items, Mr. Chair. Do you want me to go to the next public comment items? Okay. There was a public comment at the August 3rd meeting about the shark policy. And we have asked the harbor master to be here. I think, Maureen, you can display the shark policy if you can get it on the screen. And did you give Maureen, your PowerPoint, or did we decide not to do that? Okay. So we have a shark sighting policy online. It's been on there for 3 or 4 years, I think. And the harbor master can go over how it's implemented.
Okay, Sheila Lucy, the harbor master. The town shark policy is as follows. When we receive a report of a shark sighting, we send trained personnel to confirm the sighting. Once the sighting has been confirmed to be in a swimming area, we close the water for 2 hours. We send ATVs to warn patrons at the surrounding beaches, whether guarded or unguarded, for public safety. We advise the swimmers to stay out of the water for their own safety. We understand that we cannot order people out of the water, but we strongly advise them to stay on shore. If patrons want to continue to swim, we call it into police dispatch and report that swimmers are remaining in the water in case of the unfortunate occurrence of a shark attack. Once patrons have been warned of the shark, they are swimming at their own risk. When another sighting occurs in a swimming area, the clock restarts. Unfortunately, this was the case on Saturday, July 30th, when we had 22 confirmed fin sightings. Warning patrons of hazardous conditions and dangerous marine life is preventative lifeguarding. Prevention is the cornerstone of successful lifeguarding. It's our obligation to warn people, and we're going to continue to do so going forward. Any person choosing to ignore the warnings issued by the lifeguards are not only putting their own safety at risk, but are also needlessly placing the safety of the young men and women working as lifeguards at risk. After all, they are the ones that will more than likely have to rescue a person seriously injured by a shark. These warnings are an attempt to mitigate the risk to all involved. We have 82 miles of coastline, and this year to date, we have guarded over 180,000 patrons on our guarded beaches alone, never mind the unguarded beaches. Our program's core values are prevention, preparedness, and professional response, and these values are the foundation of our training program. We preach these values to our guards on a daily basis. Over the last 5 years, there have been 11 attacks in New England waters, 6 within the last 2 weeks of July 2022. Our policy is in compliance with the United States Life-Saving Association, and several communities have built their policies to align with ours. We are and will continue to be sensitive and accommodating toward the public who want to make full use of all this island has to offer, especially our beaches and waters. But we will use the necessary caution to ensure public safety. I'm glad that we are actually explaining ourselves for being a little too careful rather than the opposite. And I can guarantee you that any of those 11 people that were attacked would have been grateful that they were told that there was a shark nearby.
Thank you, Sheila.
We also had a public comment at the same meeting regarding the regulation of devices on bike paths, and we've asked town council to review state law with regard to those items and how that might go about getting changed if need be. Is John in?
That is John going to.
John is supposed to respond. Yep, there he is.
Good evening, everyone. So we've looked at the question of whether the town could prohibit the operation essentially of motorized vehicles on bike paths in the town. And the answer to that question is yes, we believe that is possible. It would require the town enacting a general bylaw to that effect, but that is certainly something that you could achieve. There's no right, unlike public ways, there's no right that for these types of vehicles to operate on the town bike paths. So if the board wants to proceed with that, we can certainly draft an appropriate bylaw for the Springtown meeting.
Any comments from the board? Questions for John? Matt?
John, are you going to be around when we do select board comments?
I'm staying for the entire meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do it then. Thank you, Libby. Okay, moving on to public comment. Because there are so many people here that want to speak, Cliff, I saw your hand first. I don't want to do this, but I have to time everybody. For the reason is so everybody can speak. Otherwise, if everybody goes 5-10 minutes, then some people have to go to dinner or have to go home. So I will time us 3 minutes. You'll hear the little ding go off and then just wrap up at that point. In the agenda that was posted outside, there's our public comment guidelines that's been vetted through town council. And it is free speech. People can say whatever they want. But just to echo what Brooke was saying is to try to keep it civil. One thing that we do say in there is all speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner. It doesn't mean you can't criticize. It isn't, I feel that select board members definitely signed up to take it on the chin sometimes. But the personal attacks are tough, but it is free speech. You can say what you want, but I'm asking everyone to keep it civil. And something else is please speak through the chair. That way, it just kind of goes through me. And Cliff, you're up first. And please state your name when you come up to the mic.
Clifford Williams, 18 William Street. I was just wondering if through you, the chairman, you could get some documents for me that, if they exist, from the FAA to do with the windmills and the instrument landing systems. I'm only one of 3 techs that take care of ILSs on the Cape and Islands. So if you have somebody who's smarter than me, which is a lot of people, I'd just like to know who put that document out, or if the document exists for the I guess the approach through the windmill field, seeing that they're only going to be 12 miles offshore. The ILS projects like 18 miles offshore, and I think they turn final at 12 miles. So it might get crowded. So anyhow, I was hoping to find out, so I'd ask through you so I don't get the wrong document through the firm we hired.
We either get that to you and or come back in September, but we'll probably just get you the document.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Megan Perry. I'll try to be super quick. The first thing I wanted to address is at the most recent Surfside Association meeting, guest speaker and select board member stated that the Housing Appeals Committee had made a final decision regarding Surfside Crossing. That's just not true. I've checked with the town. I've checked with council for both Nantucket Tipping Point and Nantucket Land Council, who are in objection to this. And I just wanted to make sure that it's known to the public that no, a final decision has not been made. While I commend the select board members' desire to push housing on Nantucket, I would kindly ask that only facts be put out into the community, especially when select board members are privy to executive session and town council. Just want to make sure there's no rumors flying around that are inaccurate. And attempting to solve a problem like housing by continuing to put in higher density development is not really solving the problem. It's just creating another one and increasing the risk to our community. Along those lines, I'd like to read a quote from Chief Murphy's written testimony regarding that. Has anybody on this board read that testimony that was submitted to the Housing Appeals Committee? Matt has? Nobody else? Okay. So he had said, and this is in the comprehensive permit and then also in the testimony, this development places an overwhelming responsibility on the fire department if an emergency were to arise. The potential load of one empty apartment building would require 5,200 gallons of water per minute to extinguish, an impossible mark for the department to meet. And we're still pushing forward on this. It is the position of the fire department that the proposed design and size of this building in relation to the size of the lot and location of the site provides inadequate fire access, creating a serious public safety concern. So what I would like to know, would this board consider writing to, having town council write to the Housing Appeals Committee and submitting new evidence that we've seen that we're overtaxed and we can't handle a fire like that? The facts were kind of revealed, and I think that based on the fire that we had at the Veranda House, it would make sense to have HAC accept a judicial note on the facts. We can still ask for that to be reopened. So I'm wondering if that would be something that this board would be comfortable doing. The developers are not fire experts, and by not taking the local fire chief's recommendations, they are knowingly putting housing before the public's health, safety, and welfare, and putting first responders who protect the community at risk. They are knowingly putting the workforce at a greater risk. If we could eliminate just one known risk and avoid these risks, it might help save lives later. My question again would be, who's liable should these developments keep going forward and we have evidence saying we can't solve these problems, we can't fight these problems? What happens if somebody were to get seriously injured or die? Who's liable for that? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anne Duez. I have a question, a comment. I sent a letter to the people who were responsible for organizing the short-term work group, making the point that the Nantucket Together group and the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers appear to be more or less identical. They have one person who serves on both boards. Before Nantucket Together was a proper organization, it was associated with the Non-Voting Taxpayers group. As far as I can see, the Non-Voting Taxpayers group has no constituency. It has 15 positions in its group on the website, of which 8 have been filled, 7 are unfilled. Back earlier this year, a group of non-voting taxpayers sent a letter to the Inquirer and Mirror saying, we don't know who these people are. They certainly don't represent us. And so I think we need to think a little bit harder about why both of these groups have been given a predetermined place in the advisory work group. That's my first comment. Secondly, I would support Mary Ann Stanton's view that the select board should be on the committee and not the finance committee for the reasons she stated. I would also like to address the short-term work group draft regulations out of our Article 39. I don't know if public comment will be part of agenda item 8. So figuring that probably there aren't, I have raised 2 objections. One is to the fees of suggestion of $150, which is absolutely ridiculous. This whole fee structure should create a system that makes for a group of people who are looking at all this, enforcing it, running it, et cetera, that is self-financing. And if you want an example, just look at Palm Springs. And the last item I would like to address is this astonishing, shocking, and completely incomprehensible firing of all of the HDC's advisory groups that was announced today. I have spent a lot of time with the HDC in the last 18 months. The advisory groups offer invaluable information and insight to their local neighborhoods that the HDC uses to very good effect. I cannot understand it. I think we need to look at this, and I think now is maybe the time to get the HDC out from under the thumb of Plus. It is not a good constructive relationship. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's what I wanted to ask town council about under Selectman's comment. I know we have other stuff tonight, but that was my plan. Is I read some of those emails, and I think we need to have a discussion at this board level about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Bridges. Burton Balkind. I want to address, I want to thank the harbor master for our hard work and the lifeguards' hard work. I know it's a thankless job, and they protect us. But I think as far as a policy, I think maybe we could look at it as a community and realize there's a difference between a sand shark, a great white shark, and a tiger shark, let's say, and maybe come up with some kind of policy where we're not scaring the public and driving up and down the beaches and telling people, there's a shark in the water when that shark might not be a danger. And I don't know how that would go, but I think we should talk about it. I do want to thank also the harbor master, because she must have had a meeting with her lifeguards, because after that Saturday and after public comment, the beaches have been a lot calmer. There's not the hysteria of the sharks. The lifeguards have been very calm in warning people and haven't been trying to, put the fear of sharks into everyone. Because I think one of the things we have to look at in the future is having a blue economy. And I think if we're going to have the reality of having sharks in our water like they have on the Cape, we could create a little tourist around it, and just blanketing all sharks is going to hurt humans is probably not the way to approach that. So I want to thank you all for your time especially the harbor master and the lifeguards.
Thank you, Burton. After this comment, we'll go online to Mr. Planzer.
Good evening. I'd like to ask whether,
You please state your name.
my name is Charity Benz, and I wanted to ask whether or not now is the appropriate time to make a suggestion for the Article 39 regulations, or whether to wait.
I think you wait. We'll take some comment.
Now?
No, you can wait. We will take comment when
Okay,
when the Board of Health, we'd have the joint meeting. We go to Bobby Planzer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Bobby.
I wanted to say I appreciate what Ms. Moore was saying earlier about public comment. I don't agree we should be attacking members of the select board or the public. I think we need to keep debate civil, not have arguments. We could have arguments, but I just don't think we should be attacking members of the public or the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
I'm Joe Townsend from the Nantucket Fire Department, Captain and Fire Prevention Officer. Good evening. It's been made very clear that my questions from 2 weeks ago was not really taken into consideration based on the response, and it was handpicked on what to address. No discussions have taken place about the possibility of disapproving the Fire Chief Committee's recommendation. My guess is that the town will try to pull the wool over everyone's eyes by talking about vehicles and equipment purchased. Something that probably won't be mentioned is that these purchases replaced a 1988 Ford fire engine, an engine 4, which is currently out of service, a ladder truck that doesn't have a working ladder bucket and a rejection sticker, tanker 2, which is not to be used and only used as an absolute last resort, engine 3, which has a leak in its water tank. So imagine showing up to a fire with no water. Needless to say, it's not a very great inventory of vehicles. What should be mentioned is the lack of transparency, the comments made by Mr. Patterson, the relationship that Mr. Perro had with Mr. Christopoulos, and the resume of Mr. Cranston, which easily is comparable to any of the other applicants, and an extensive experience of 5 years as a chief in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I myself have more qualifications and training than Mr. Cranston. I have more certifications from the Mass Fire Academy. I've only been a firefighter for 10 years. Mr. Cranston has been a firefighter for 27 years, and he has 4. The fact that these things aren't being taken into consideration makes me seriously consider what's going on with town government. Mr. Fee expressed that he has never seen so much attention brought before him on an issue regarding something that a town hiring. Wouldn't you think that would warrant a discussion amongst select board members, perhaps even going over the pros and cons of this hiring process? You haven't listened, and you still haven't addressed it. You haven't talked to us, and there's no transparency. And now I'm starting to question whether you think we deserve to be safe as a fire department. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Chairman Bridges, Mac Davis. I just kind of want to share my experience. I started the Nantucket Fire Department last June, and I resigned this June. Part of the reason because I was taking too much time away from my family was my main reason. The other reason was because the morale was really low based off the fact that I'm listening to you, Brooke, and I don't want to put anybody down, but the reality is it's a horribly run business. And I think most of you know that I run a business. And I applied to the town of Nantucket for an open position, that there was 3 positions open. If it wasn't for me being as aggressive as I am, I would have never gotten hired, probably within a year. I applied, I took time away from my family, I went and got my EMT, I had to follow up. Amanda Perry's wonderful. I had to follow up, ask when my application was received, Every step of the way, I had to follow up. I had to ask our chief. I think what's missing in terms of what Joe said with transparency is the respect that we don't get for the fire department, okay? The brothers and sisters that I've gained at the fire department, they're the ones when everybody was so scared to go out and get groceries, was sitting in the back of an ambulance with everybody with COVID. I want you guys to look back and remember, if one of you guys have ridden in an ambulance over the years, has anybody from this department saved you or one of your family members? Because it's real easy to bring someone in from off island that's not connected. Sean Mitchell's become a close friend of mine because he earned it and because I earned it with him. I understand your decisions already made. I think kind of what upset me tonight was, why did you put all this equipment up there? If you can have brand new equipment, but if nobody wants to work for the fire department, doesn't matter how nice it is. Sean Mitchell's a wonderful human. The people sitting next to him, Aisha, Nate, they're doing stuff and not getting paid for it all the time. PFAS, they're doing stuff unrewarded. And you're going to bring in a guy from away. How long have you lived here, Mr. Fee? Most of your life, if not all of it, right? There's still streets you don't know. There's still streets I don't know. And I learned that when I got into an ambulance or a fire truck at 2 a.m. when my eyes were glued shut, trying to find my way around Nantucket. Now you're going to bring in a guy that's going to step over Sean Mitchell, right? You're going to bring in a guy that doesn't know how to go. And you know what he's going to do? Hey, Sean, just like what's happening right now, right? There's no chief working with him right now. And I'm just being honest. And they're going to go, hey, Sean, which way should I go to attack this fire? Give me your advice. It's an absolute slap in the face to a wonderful human and everybody else that works under him because they respect him, not because he has a position that is above them. And there's a difference, and we all know that. My business, I have a motto. Nobody's more important than the broom. I started on June of last year. I cleaned the bathroom every single day for a year, no matter what happened. He does the same thing. He deserves the respect. And I'm telling you guys, before you lose people, before people walk off of the department, Mrs. Gibson, I'm speaking. I tell my children all the time, eye contact when someone's speaking. It's respectful, okay? It bothers me that people can't look people in the eye, right? I did Meals on Wheels with my kids today. A gentleman was speaking to my 8-year-old daughter, and she said, thank you. And he said, thank you back. And I turned to her and I said, eye contact, please. It matters, okay? He matters. Before you guys lose people, and you have Mr. Cranston here, okay? I was with my kids on the day of that fire. I'd resigned, doing a yard sale. They wanted to do the bake sale. I finished that bake sale with them only because Sean was there, Nate, and all the people that I love. I went in, okay? All I did was run bottles, make sure they had oxygen, make sure they had gear. Sean trusted me, okay? I didn't even put in for the time that I was there. I ended up in the hospital too. I didn't even put in for the time that I was there as a call guy because a call guy, a call EMT gets paid $20 to risk his life. That's what the town does for the fire department. $20. I could bag groceries for $20. You guys know that. I just want you to be aware of what's happening. The morale is down, and you can have all the brand new equipment and shiny stuff in the world, but people are going to walk out of that shiny door, and then our loved ones aren't going to be cared for. Brooke, I know you personally, and I love you, and I respect you, and I need you guys to hear me. I don't think you can overturn this, is what I've heard, but dig down inside of you, not because you work next to the person with you when you make this decision. Make it about what's right, not about that you have to live in an office with people, because I know that's what it's about. That guy right there deserves to be where he should be. Thank you.
Hello, folks. I'm Steve Ternovish. This morning, I received an unsolicited text message from Deputy Chief Gibson of the Nantucket Police Department. It is my belief that this text message was designed to be threatening in nature. This text, although poorly written, conveyed a message about my having commented on, quote, something you know nothing about. Although not explicitly stated in the deputy chief's text, I surmised that this unsettling communication was about my public opposition to the selection process for the fire chief position. In case anyone was wondering, I chose not to be intimidated. It is disturbing that someone in a position of such significant authority would take this overt action to try to deny me my First Amendment rights. Thus, I am hereby making this board aware of this situation. Where this matter goes next, that's a topic for another day. My question to the board tonight is this: what exactly is it that we, the general public, don't know about this hiring process that we should know? Maybe Charlie's onto something. Here's some things we do know. We certainly know that Sean Mitchell is a committed, long-term Nantucket resident. You've heard it over and over tonight. He is a proven leader. We know that he led the crew that saved untold millions of dollars worth of property in the downtown district during the Overlook fire. We know that he has the support and the respect of the men and women he works for. On the other hand, we only know a few things about Mr. Cranston, the next great thing. He's from Portsmouth, Rhode Island. We know he's been retired for 4+ years. We know that he has very little knowledge of Nantucket. We know that he will require a housing stipend and who knows what else. And we certainly know that he's about to walk into an acrimonious situation. That's about all we know. So please enlighten us, fill in the blanks. Tell us what Deputy Chief Gibson thinks I should know, such as how the simple situation went so very wrong. I thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tuna. If we could refrain from the clapping, please. Is there any other public comment?
If no one else from the fire department wants to speak, I'll speak. I'm Hillary Hedges Rayport. So I served on the Historical Commission for 3 years as a volunteer, so I know something about volunteering for the town. I didn't risk my life. I don't have the same level of grievance that the folks at the fire department have, but I do have some perspective about what I would like to see improve in communications with the town. So there is a code of conduct, and I think that's what Brooke Moore was asking for, certainly relevant, asking for proper conduct, asking for respect. And I made a complaint. I filed it on July 21st with our town manager because I felt that a member of a board had violated the code of conduct. Many of you saw that because it was multiple posts on social media calling women who exercise their civic right to legislate in our form of government Karens, which is a misogynistic and derogatory term, or has become that way, and targeting me personally, an 1,100-word screed filled with lies, falsehoods, really the most brutal kind of attacks, so much so that it inspired people that I didn't even know, who generally don't agree with me, to call me and apologize on her behalf. And we have a code of conduct which says that members of the community who hold office are held to the highest personal standard in their professional and personal activities. Anyway, I've been informed by the town manager, and I do appreciate your time and consultation in taking the complaint seriously, Ms. Gibson. But the response was that the recommendation was not to pursue it, that these statements that were made by our community bully, who has bullied many people over many years and has been professionally and politically rewarded for doing it, should not be investigated, are not relevant, and that there would be no further action. So I guess I would say that that you might consider this code of conduct and the message that it sends when you choose to let people bully other people in broad sight using information that they've gained because powerful friends have sent it to them, information that they've harvested and targeted people and harmed people and caused them to be defamed. and then you reward those people personally. When people make comments that they wouldn't want to defame anyone in a public meeting and then turn around and talk to the press and defame that person. When people gloat on social media about other people's misfortune, you know who you are. So I think leadership comes from the top. I'd like to see you enforce your code of conduct or clarify when you're not going to enforce it. And if you want to professionally reward bullies and you want to undervalue departments that over-deliver in ways that many people can't even begin to imagine, then I think you're going to continue to have problems with civility in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. I think after all great tragedies, we have lessons that we learn. And I guess my question to all of us today is, what are the lessons that we're learning? After the Great Fire, the lessons that Nantucket had learned was we make wider roads, we build brick buildings, things of that sort. And I was thinking about that with the Veranda House fire and was thinking, okay, what are the lessons that we learned? And typically I try, I try not to go to the fires. I unfortunately was at this one. Sorry. And had to see a lot of brave people do a lot of brave things. So I thank the community. You guys were incredible. But it made me think this is really scary. Sorry. And I don't think we're learning the lesson that we're supposed to. And, had people not been at specific points, there would have been lives lost, and there were homes lost, and there was a family pet lost. And we're acting like, no big deal, let's just keep it moving. But it was not like that. It was bad. And I feel like we perhaps are not thinking ahead and seeing that we need to do more, and kind of just leaving a lot up to luck. And I see that, I've heard my husband continuously tell me that the department is underfunded, it's understaffed. I hear it's because of housing, I hear it's because, but we need to do more. We need to staff it, we need to fund it. Because right now we have 20 firefighters fighting the fires that off island would be about 200 people. NFPA code says, when there's a fire, 4 people in a fire truck should show up within about 4 to 5 minutes. Then within 8 minutes, they'd like 18. That's our whole fire department. We can't be anywhere in 8 minutes. What the fire department is doing is basically superhuman work with limited resources, and our community is picking up the pieces. People were dropping off waters. There were people opening up their homes because there was basically people acting like Red Cross. The Nantucket Cottage Hospital came to them. I mean, these aren't things that you see off island, and that's why I'm so grateful for the community doing this, but they shouldn't have to pick up the pieces because we can't staff a fire department. And what I worry about is the liability. I worry constantly about my husband and what happens if I become a widow because of understaffing. What happens if one of my friends becomes a widow or our children don't have fathers or mothers because we just don't have housing for staffing or money or whatever it is. And I don't mean this at you. I'm just saying, how can we learn from this? And what can we do? Because it is very scary. So I just wanted to read actually from that report, and I really appreciate that report being brought up because this is all stuff that I'm learning right now. And this is the report, the hiring report. It says the Nantucket Fire Department faces unique challenges due to the island isolation. Unlike most other fire departments, it cannot partner with other nearby municipalities for mutual aid. It is vital then for the department to maintain equipment and personnel necessary to respond to any emergency on the island at any time. This requires a significant investment in staff, training, and equipment, as well as continuous monitoring and performance review. These recommendations address staffing, structure, process changes that will better equip the department to meet its needs. But hold on, I have one more, sorry. Oh, the OSHA one. So this is also, OSHA says 2 in, 2 out. And basically, we have firefighters going to fires, just 2 people at a time. Nate was at the Summer House Hotel fire in Sconset, just one person in the fire, 3rd floor, all alone. He said he thought he was going to die in that one. Not because of the fire, but because his heart was just pounding and he thought he was going to have a heart attack, but he was in there all alone and 2 people were outside manning the truck. That's dangerous. We can't keep relying on these people to act like superheroes and fixing these things. So that's, I just hope that we can address that, and I hope that we can get them the staffing that they need, because not only is it many people's lives, it's many, many millions and millions of dollars of property that people are trusting us to take care of. And they're big, big investments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aisha. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comments not on the agenda? Okay, there's none online either. Thank you, everyone. There's no new business that I know of. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 21st, August 3rd, and August 4th?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. Can we, I know everyone probably wants to talk about the fire chief contract. Can we look at everything else? Is there anything else from the board or Libby besides that one we can start with?
I'll make a motion to approve everything.
Okay.
Other than that, and then we'll talk about that if you want.
Cool, that's fine.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye. What? He said accept.
We just approved all the pending contracts except that one, so people could talk about it. Supplemental members have, Matt?
What's that?
Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, my comment, I'm going to vote in favor of it. I think there's a lot of good points here. But I think at the same time, we have a process that was followed. I don't think that Libby can't manage and we can't manage by sort of Facebook likes, et cetera. I think equating this to Sean Mitchell, who is a great guy, and equating this as one as on the other, they're 2 separate things. And in other hires that I've been involved in, I've said, geez, we can get 2 people instead of 1 person. We're getting 2 in this hire. I hope that, I think some of the most touching, much scary things to me were the last comments from Aisha. And I think that those are the things that we as a community need to come together on with the new chief, with the existing crew, and work on. Because I think you're 100% right. I think there are issues that need to be solved that came up from this past veranda fire. And I think if those are not discussed, with the firemen, with the administration, and figured out, I think, housing, everything, putting back together a volunteer crew that gets more than $20, making sure that there's the horsepower to handle something like that, and making sure that there is the staffing so that you guys you're not in the situations that you're in now. I think all those things have to be addressed, but I don't think, I don't think if we continue to bang at each other like this, I don't think we're going to address them. So yeah, anyway, I think that's, we're in a I would say we're in a difficult situation. The hiring has gotten a lot better. We have a great finance department. That took the first 10 or 20 years till we got the right people in place. I think that, so anyway, there's a lot that goes into this. I think that we need to move forward, and we need to move forward positively, as much as this is painful. And so, and I wish I spoke better.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments? Go ahead, Brooke.
Since I've been on the select board, it's become apparent to me that the demands and the needs for this community clearly outstrip the resources that we've made available. And the fire department is a glaring example of that. And I think it goes across departments in compensation, in resources. And I think we have a community have a hard discussion to talk about being under-resourced overall. And I'm willing to have that conversation. And I really want to talk about where the funding comes from to resource our community. Our growth in our revenue is capped at 2.5% a year. Our community is growing far faster than 2.5% a year. And I think we have to have a serious conversation about what we've left behind due to those constraints. And this is part of that big picture that I, for one, want to address in a much broader scale and respond to the needs of the fire department and other departments as well.
In all of this discussion, it's become very clear that we definitely need to get more feedback from within and reprioritize. I look at some of the money that we spend on certain studies and legal costs, and some of those things could really be so much more productive, I think, being spent on public safety, making sure that the resources are available to protect the people of the community. I mean, yes, we have to do long-term planning and other things, but we really need to talk about what drops when we pay for something else. For new initiatives, we've got to go back to what are the most important things that have to be protected on this island before maybe we take on some of those new endeavors if we can't provide the proper resources. The contract has already passed the deadline.
No,
is my understanding.
Yeah, we still have to vote it tonight.
So there's 4 contracts in, I believe it's from the state, that has to come through pending contracts here. So for example, like an IT director, sorry, Karen, doesn't come through here. So town manager, fire chief, police chief, and finance director have to come through pending contracts through the select board for because it's a contract. All the others don't, so that's why it's coming here. The 15-day period is passed, we didn't veto it, but there's one more formality here. So we could vote it down, and then the new fire chief would have to. Hold on a second, hold on, please come to the mic. I'll be happy to take a comment if you like. I don't want to have everybody yelling. So I'm saying, let me finish. We could vote that tonight. It doesn't seem like we will, but we'll take a vote on it and we'll see where everybody's at.
Thank you. I will stand up for my husband and
Yes.
Aisha's husband and every firefighter on Nantucket. You are making a huge mistake by hiring Cranston and approving the contract tonight. And God forbid any of your businesses, your homes, your family members, anything happen to them, and you have Cranston in charge and not Sean Mitchell. So this is your chance to say that you heard us. You ignore our emails, you ignore the social media posts. Now is your time to prove to us that you heard us. We voted you in. Listen to us. How much louder does it need to be? Because I can get louder. Thanks.
Don, did you want to finish? Anything, or you-
in that regard, it's a conversation for another time, apparently. You know, I mean, I have extremely mixed feelings. I don't think that there is necessarily a bad
Can I make a
choice
request?
here, but it's very difficult.
Excuse me, Dawn, please finish, and we'll let everybody talk.
It's very difficult to not support town administration that has done an appropriate job and picks a qualified candidate. It puts us in a very difficult place.
Joe?
So why not delay and discuss it with the members that this is going to affect? Myself, the rest of the firefighters. Nobody has discussed this with the fire department. You've had people on the hiring committee that don't have the pulse of the fire department. You know, Neil Patterson said that, you know, he was a 20-year firefighter. He stepped a foot in the fire department 3 times in the last 5 years. So if he was brought in as a civilian, that's great, but he shouldn't have been touting his resume at the last select board meeting. He's got no experience as a full-time firefighter. He doesn't know what it's like to be there 24 hours a day, to work and do the job that we do. And nobody else on that committee does. And like I said, Mr. Parrow had a relationship, a professional relationship with the top candidate. Mr. Patterson made comments that were in for a rude awakening. The entire town is asking you to stop, listen, talk about this. You're bringing in somebody that has 5 years experience in command capacity. I saw his resume. Quite honestly, I'm probably more qualified than he is. And I've only got 10 years experience as a firefighter. I don't understand where the disconnect is, where the entire town is asking you to reconsider this. There's got to be some other agenda that I'm just not aware of, because you're just passing this along. You're rubber stamping it. It just doesn't make any sense. So please think about this. Take your time. Don't be afraid of what the other members are going to think of you. Don't worry about how much longer you're going to be in this position. Do the right thing. Think about this. Talk about this. You said the 15 days expired, Jason. You and I had that conversation. You didn't even know that the 15 days had expired. So how are you discussing this with other board members to make sure you're making the right decision for Nantucket, not just the fire department, the entire island, because it affects everybody on this island. So please, take your time, think about it, put off the vote on his contract tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Sure, go ahead.
David Bold, Essex Road. I didn't plan on speaking tonight, but I've heard a lot of things that really bother me. We have a proven, well-respected member of the community in the fire department who proved himself among many other times, but especially the Veranda House fire. If not for that gentleman and the people who believed in him and trusted him, that he was able to lead to really save downtown. If he wasn't there, if it was anybody else without his knowledge and people believing in him, we would be in a much different position as a town today, dramatically. So if you're talking about qualifications of a candidate, you can look at a resume, but ultimately you talk to a person and look at what they've done, not just what they put on paper. And this gentleman has done miraculous things for this town. So the townspeople are telling you, they're begging you, as the representatives of the townspeople, this that you're doing is a mistake. Stop it. Listen to the town. We're telling you, don't hire Cranston. We've got the guy that we should have. Hire him. Anything else is a gross mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Members, would you like a vote?
Yeah, sure.
Would you like a vote? Are we ready to vote? I need a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I can't do it.
Is that a no?
It's not a no. I want to put it off. I'm not ready.
I'm voting yes. So vote, it passes 3-1.
I'm really concerned that the new chief isn't going to get the respect of the department, and it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Are we ready to move on to the joint meeting, Board of Health? You want to take a break? We good?
No, let's go.
Okay.
Can I go to I'm going to go to the restroom.
Okay. We have a joint meeting with the Board of Health. This is to review draft short-term rental regulations. Is everybody here from the Board of Health? Where's the Board of Health? Are they online? Sorry. Oh, there you are, Steve.
Jason, I'm here. Steve Visco. I think Melissa's not going to be here, and I'm not sure if Jim's going to be here. So, can you hear me? Yeah, I'd like to just, call our session of this Wednesday.
Jim is here. He's in.
Okay, so I'm just going to call our session.
Carrie. Oh, is she on here? Oh, there's Carrie. Yep.
Hey,
What's that?
Carrie's a man.
I'm sorry. I've never met Carrie. So yes, you do have a quorum. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll call this session of our Board of Health meeting in joint with you to order. And board members, please acknowledge for the record that you are present. Carrie McKenna.
Present.
Meredith Lepre.
Here.
Jim Cooper.
Here.
And Steve Visco's here. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jason.
Okay, thank you. Libby, did you were going to open?
Sure. At the 2022 annual town meeting voted Article 39, which authorized the Board of Health to adopt short-term rental regulations. It also requires the approval of the select board. So myself, town council, the planning director, the health director, and our real estate specialist have put together some draft short-term rental regulations. They're in your packet. I think town council can take you through them if need be. We also, in your packet, is a document from Granicus, which is the town's vendor that is going to be assisting with implementation of the short-term rental registration program. And they had some thoughts about the regulations, which I think we wanted to take you through because they're not reflected in the regulations that are in your packet. However, they are items that you may want to consider with respect to changing some of the language possibly. And after tonight, depending on what you want to change, we can make some of those changes. And then there would be probably in the next month or so, or whenever we can schedule it, the actual public hearing to adopt the regulations. And that would probably be a joint public hearing as well. So John, do you want to take the board through and then we can go through the Granicus memo?
Certainly. Good evening again. So the draft regulations that are in your packet are obviously an growth of the vote by the board under Article 39 at the annual town meeting. In essence, these regulations will take effect on January 1st, 2023. They will require any individual who is engaged in short-term rental on the island to file a application for a certificate of registration. The form of that application will be included as an attachment to the regulations. The annual fee that will be charged is $150. And I believe at the annual town meeting, the town approved the creation of a revolving account for these application fees. And the money will go into that revolving account and can be expended, by the town manager with the approval of the select board for contracts. And primarily that would be the Granicus contract that the board has already approved. We're going to require that the applicants provide ownership information. That is, what is the nature of the entity that owns the unit, whether it's a professionally managed unit And we're also obviously going to ask for contact information. We're going to ask for a copy of the current certificate of registration that's on file with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. And by the way, we're also going to ask for a description of the premises, including the square footage, the name and address of somebody who can respond to address issues on site within on a 24-hour per day basis. We're going to require liability insurance in the amount of at least $1 million. And there'll have to be a certificate of insurance placed on file. And then we're going to ask for an attestation, which means a statement signed under the pains and penalties of perjury that they have in compliance with all applicable federal and state and local laws, that they will not discriminate, and that they have they're up to date on the payment of all their taxes and water and sewer charges. In terms of the actual operation of short-term rentals, we are proposing in the regulations that occupancy be limited to 2 people per bedroom plus 2 additional people in the unit. Parking will have to meet the standard that it will not create any public health or public safety issues or create undue traffic congestion. And the Board of Health may refer violations of these parking requirements to the appropriate town enforcing agent. All advertisements for short-term rentals must include the operator's certificate of registration for informational purposes. And there's also a requirement that the operator provide certain information to the renters, and a copy of the certificate of registration, the maximum number of occupants and vehicles allowed, and also information with regard to emergency exit diagrams, instructions for waste disposal, etc. We're going to require the operators to maintain for a period of at least 3 years records of the information for each short-term rental, including the type of rental, dates and numbers of nights, number of guests, and number of vehicles. We're also going to require that the operator provide to the Board of Health on a quarterly basis an electronic form giving a breakdown of each listing, where it's located, whether the listing is a room, an apartment, or a house rental, the number of nights each unit was reported as occupied during the applicant the reporting period, and as well as the full contact information for the operator. Obviously, the regulations need to state that the operator is responsible for ensuring compliance with the short-term rental bylaw, as well as the regulations, and that there's a cross-reference to violations of any applicable statutes, bylaws, and regulations shall be deemed to be a violation of the regulations. There'll be a procedure for inspections of the short-term rental, and a reference back to the well, let me say that the Board of Health will enforce the regulations in accordance with the bylaw. And you may recall that we set forth in the bylaw all the various enforcement options. We are still waiting to hear back from the Attorney General on the approval of Article 39. And I will tell you that some questions have been raised about the civil penalty that I wrote into that bylaw. I've had some conversations with the Attorney General, and we will see just exactly what the Attorney General does with that civil penalty provision, although I don't think the Attorney General has any issues with the other enforcement mechanisms that we included. And also, the Board of Health may determine whether violations of the regulations warrant either a suspension or revocation of the certificate of registration. And that would be something that would only be done after a public hearing. So that's where we are. I think I would emphasize to the Board of Health and to the Select Board, the whole purpose of these, and the public, obviously, that's listening tonight. As I've said in the past, the whole purpose of these regulations is to provide a mechanism for the town to collect data as to who owns these short-term rentals, where they're located, and in order to determine whether further substantive regulation of the operation of short-term rentals is warranted. And that, of course, is something that your work group is going to be addressing in short order. The exact nature of future bylaws, whether they be general bylaws or zoning bylaws, what kinds of regulations will be included. That's all going, those decisions are going to be informed by the data that's collected with regard to the certificate of registration program. So that's a summary, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that either board members might have at this time.
Steve, go ahead.
Anybody have any questions from the board?
Yeah, Carrie?
I think Jim Cooper.
Go ahead, Jim.
I think there are some things that the Board of Health can either agree with or not, but there are some things that have absolutely nothing to do with the Board of Health. We have no right to say how many cars can be in a driveway. I mean, the Board of Health is here to provide the health and safety of the people of Nantucket. But I don't think, my opinion is, I don't think we should be asked to approve this thing as a whole. There are parts of it, I think, that we would have a right to say yes or no, but I don't think overall, as far as I'm concerned, we should agree to this. That's the way I feel. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, so on the parking issue, we had quite a bit of discussion among staff about what the extent of the Board of Health's review of parking issues should be under these regulations. And it was the general consensus that the Board of Health should not be in the business of regulating the number of parking spaces or where that parking can occur, because that really is more a traditional issue under zoning. But we do think there's a role for the Board of Health to play with respect to parking based upon the plenary authority of the Board of Health to address public health and safety issues. Chapter 111 of the general laws is replete with providing jurisdiction to boards of health to ensure that activities do not create a public nuisance or create public health or safety issues. And so that is going to be a limited role of the Board of Health in enforcing these regulations.
Any other questions on that?
On the parking, I think what they do in Amherst, and they have a slightly different problem because they've got the students situation. And so they make the renters provide a parking plan, and the parking plan will show that there's enough spaces for the number of cars that are on the door, on the unit. So I think that might be a way for us to tackle this, is to just require a parking plan, and that will lay out how many spaces can park. One of the biggest complaints we get is with some of these units is multiple vehicles and then parties, and they're blocking the streets, they're blocking the neighborhoods. So I think if it was clear that, okay, you've got X amount of parking and that's where you're parking, I think that would help for the enforcement. Because I agree the Board of Health isn't going to go out and enforce that, But then the police are going to say, well, how can we? What are the rules? They can park there, why not? I think there's going to be, unless they're parked illegally and the police have the staff and time to do it. So I think that I think we could tighten that up a little bit. One of the other, someone had a suggestion earlier today that maybe we should require the certificate of occupancy for the dwellings to make sure that the dwellings have that level, because that has a lot of information on it. That could be included in the application process. I thought that was a good suggestion. The other comment is I just want to make sure that if we do this and we allow all types and all people, that we are not doing a tacit approval, John, that we have. So just for argument's sake, let's say that we at some point decide that this should be an ancillary use and you should be living in your house X amount of time to do this. If that comes out of the work group, having run it this way for a year or two, have we done anything that would preclude us making that determination later?
No, not in my opinion, Matt.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
And I also want to point out in regard to that, I know there's been some concern about that in the past, but there was a very interesting Supreme Judicial Court ruling that came out just a week or two ago, which upheld the town of Bourne enacting a ban on marijuana establishments through a general bylaw. And of course, there is no grandfathering when it's a general bylaw. And the SJC upheld that and did an interesting analysis of the differences between when you have to do something by zoning and when you can do it by a general bylaw. I won't get into great detail here, but my initial evaluation of that case is that the town would be well within its rights to enact a general bylaw regulating the operation of short-term rentals. And this particular bylaw and regulations creating the registry and also addressing nuisance conditions would not affect the ability of the town to do that in the future.
Steve, can you see the hands up? Do you want me to call?
Why don't you go, Kerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that for a definition of short-term rental, we're talking about length of occupancy less than 31 days. I mean, there's no number attached to anything. And yes, I looked up some of the laws, and the one that seemed to be most consistent was occupancy for less than 31 days, 31 consecutive days qualifies as short-term rental. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, yes, we included a definition of short-term rentals in the bylaw, Article 39, which I believe addressed the type of facility and also referenced the 31 days that you're referring to. Because under state law, if you have a change of occupancy that is less than 31 days, it is considered to be a short-term rental. And the intent of the bylaw and these regulations is to follow that same standard.
Thank you.
Yeah, the definition is rental periods with a change in occupancy in excess of 31 calendar days shall not be considered a short-term rental. And then it said the rental of property for a total of 14 days or less in any calendar year shall not be considered a short-term rental.
That's
so
correct.
Those are the two factors.
And those are both from the state law.
Okay, thank you.
Meredith, you have your hand up.
Yes, I am concerned about the annual fee of $150. That is ridiculously low. I mean, just before the meeting, I looked on Airbnb and you can't find a room for under $600 that I could see on this island for next week. So the fact that we would say it's $150, I think that needs to be evaluated. I think I think that Ann Duez spoke earlier, and we could fund this a lot better and do a better job with this if we charged more money. $150 is like nothing in the grand scheme of how much people are making renting out their houses. I just think that we are doing a huge disservice to this whole program if we don't actually put some money into it and have people pay more than $150.
Libby?
I just want to comment, these are draft regulations. You all do whatever you want with them when it comes time for the public hearing. However, and I would want John to weigh in on this, the fee, John, needs to be commensurate with the amount of town resources that go into running the program. Is that correct?
That's correct, Libby. So it's very important when the town sets fees to abide by what's known as the Emerson College test, which distinguishes a fee from a tax. You know, the town does not have the authority to impose taxes. That can only come from the legislature, but you can impose fees. And the standards are that the fee must be for a particular service, which is the case here. This is only, the fee is going to be used to monitor, if you will, and administer the program. And it's only paid by those individuals who have a short-term rental. It has to be a voluntary program, which this is. No one's required to engage in short-term rentals. And finally, and perhaps the most significant to this question is, your fee has to be set at a level that is sufficient to reimburse the town for the costs of the program. And if you assume there are 1,800 short-term rentals on Nantucket, and you multiply that number by $150, you get about $270, I believe. Math was never my strong point.
That's correct, John.
I believe your Granicus contract to administer this program is 100, and help me with that, Libby, it might be 120,000. So this is all going to go into that revolving fund. It's going to stay in that fund until it's expended. That fund could potentially grow year to year. And if it's determined that that fee is insufficient, that the program, administering the program, is actually costing the town more money, well, that fee can be adjusted at that point.
John, I have a quick question. What about the fees that you don't see? So Granis is this, but is it the health director's time? It's taken, 20, 50, 40% of the staff's time. How does that get factored in, or can it?
It can be factored in.
Okay.
It can be. It's got to be directly related to this program. It could be all sorts of town costs, equipment and personnel. But it's really hard to gauge at this point how much this is actually going to cost the town. And because that's why we put this in the regulation and not in the bylaw, because this regulation can be amended pretty readily. You don't have to go to town meeting to change it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Libby?
Just to add on to what John was saying, that was one of the reasons why we picked a lowish number, because we don't know how much town time it's going to take. And the fee could, if we find that we're spending massive amounts of time on it, that's costing a lot more, then we'd probably recommend a fee increase.
I kind of think I agree with Mary on starting a little higher, just getting to the 300s. I just feel like it's always going to take more time than we think. Oh, Roberto has his hand up. He's probably going to correct me on something.
Not really. The only other reason that we chose 150 is because that's what we charge for in-holders, lodging houses, dormitories. It's 150 for the year. That's on par with every other type of housing permit that we offer. If we upped this, we might want to consider upping the other ones as well, because these programs all fall in together.
So you're starting with parity. And
We're starting with parity.
If we see the costs are higher, we can.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Now, you would have to examine them. Some of them are not, some of them are paying commercial tax rates, which are almost double. Some are residential rates. You would have to actually dig into it and see, and it's always been one of the issues with, between sort of different categories. We've been sort of, if one is a lot cheaper than the other, you're going to get a lot more of it. So.
could we consider, sorry, could we consider like a fee for primary residents and non-primary residents? Like it says in the stuff from the corporation that is running this, that in Atlantic City, New Jersey, a non-primary residence STR permit costs $1,800. So I believe as a town, we charge different tax rates if it's your primary residence or not your primary residence. Could we do that with these?
John, can we do that?
I would be hesitant to suggest that going, at least initially. What would be, unless the town could justify a higher cost for administering a short-term rental by a non-primary resident as opposed to a primary resident. If you could justify a difference in the cost of administering the program, then perhaps you could do that. But the way this is set up, whether it's a primary residence or not, folks have to file the same paperwork, and the town is going to be monitoring short-term rentals. That's one of Granicus's jobs. And I don't believe they're distinguishing between primary and non-primary residents. So I would be skeptical of doing that, at least initially. I would much prefer that you set, I say prefer, but from a legal defensibility standpoint, it would be much better for you to set the fee across the same amount across the board, unless you can, as I said, articulate a reason why it's going to cost the town more to enforce this with a non-primary resident.
Yeah, you'd have to come up with an underlying public purpose, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, I'm not clear about inspection and whether there's a safety or health inspection before the issuance of the permit. And perhaps there would be a different fee for square footage or size of the house, because that would be a different cost. But are we contemplating inspecting for smoke detectors and CO detectors and the like?
At first, we're just trying to get this registration up and running. So inspections would be complaint based. Once the system is up and running, then we're going to want to look into doing at renewal. But right now, it's a heavy enough lift to just get 1,800 people registered. It's going to take a greater part of a year to get that done.
But there is a sign off.
Yes.
That the property owner has to certify that they're in compliance with all building code, health codes.
Absolutely. And the suggestion that was made about the CO, I have no objection to. I think that's actually a great idea, because the CO certifies that at the time of transfer, it had met all those standards. So it's kind of like a preliminary inspection to the inspection.
And it also verifies whether or not there are outstanding building permits on the property. If they have a CO,
absolutely,
it would be clear.
Correct. And actually, this is a lot of the foresight from a few years back. All of that's on EnerGov now. So once the citizens portal is up and running, they can even look up their own to see if they have anything from long ago that they need to close out.
If there's probably more questions, but I don't want to lose track of going through the Granicus memo.
Dave Iverson has a question. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. I just want to, and maybe Andrew Vorse would better answer this question. If we ask for a CO, is that going to cause a problem with some of the older dwellings here that seem to be in limbo? And would that just hold up the process? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Andrew.
The answer to that is yes. There are older structures that do not have a CO, so there would have to be some sort of exemption for that. Newer structures, of course, do, but older ones do not.
Thank you.
And those, just so the board knows, those are pre-1972. That's the year that the town adopted the building code.
Just a question on that. Don't they have to get a CO to transfer at some point, or does it transfer without a CO? And I know what a pain it is to get it. I've struggled to keep it whenever I finish work on one of my houses. It's always a struggle to get everything signed and get everybody back and make sure it's done. But I'm wondering, is on a transfer, don't you have to do it or no?
Not necessarily. Not if it's a cash deal, then usually that stuff slips by. Anytime a bank's involved, one of the first things they want to see is a CO. So, and we know there's a lot of no mortgage deals down here, and some of those probably slip through. Meredith, did you want to?
Sorry, that may be true, but there are also homes that are in families that have not necessarily transferred per se. So it's complicated. It's not one or the other. There's different levels here. So
yeah.
So are we saying that we're going to have exemptions for basically houses built before 1970 because they may not have a CO, and just instead of saying that they have to isn't that a certificate of occupancy? I mean, I feel like that sort of then lends that people can be renting out houses that maybe aren't okay to be rented out or lived in. I mean, that seems like there should be a way to rectify that if somebody wants to short-term rental their house built before 1970.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to answer that?
Yes, Andrew.
Okay, I think, we're going to have probably we're not going to be able to solve this discussion tonight because there are antique homes that, simply don't meet modern codes. I don't know if the intent here is to not allow those into the rental market. There would have to be some thought about that.
Yeah, my intent isn't to do that, Andrew. My intent is to ensure that there is to put a double check in the system and ensure that all houses that are rented are safe.
No,
mine isn't to not, rent them if they're rented now and they're, it's used now and it isn't an issue. I don't have an issue with it.
Right.
I agree. I think they should be safe. Like they should have, I don't really care how old it is. It should have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and should be safe for people to stay in.
There's no question about that. I just think that all houses aren't going to meet modern codes for sometimes stairways and windows and other things. I'll have to, consult with the building inspector on that and get back to you.
Part of the Board of Health inspection process in that regulation is when you call for your inspection, that all those things would be checked. Harry, did you have another?
Yeah, well, again, I think I'm probably echoing Meredith and even Matt that, is a town, by saying a place is unknown if it's safe, putting itself in some form of liability if it is rented and, we say we just didn't know. If a place is exempt and applies, can they be one that get put to the top of an inspection list so we can get that they can rent out? I mean, I want those houses be rented. A lot of them are in the families, and a lot of those are being used to help with expenses. But the flip side is, one house goes down and 3 people die in a house that didn't have a C of O, and we kind of just pushed it through. I'm a little uncomfortable with saying, yeah, that was okay, too bad though.
However, this does say that the owner has to attest that they're complying with all laws, and the current law requires smoke detectors and CO detectors. So they would be attesting that those safety measures are in place. What we're quibbling about is building codes and antique buildings that are exempt from modern building codes, steepness of stairs, et cetera. But in terms of fire safety and that kind of stuff, that's under the bylaw, the state bylaw already, or the state law. So they would be attesting that they're in compliance according to these rules.
So perhaps the safety issue is covered?
Yeah.
Outside of the
I think-
CO
yeah.
issue for older homes?
It may be, it may not be.
Okay.
It would depend. An antique home is exempted on a lot of the safety issues. There's certain ones they can't exempt, but stairways and things you can exempt. Certain windows, egress, if you're putting stuff in a cellar and they put a new cellar under it, the windows have to be big enough that you can get out of. There's certain things, but regardless of whether it's an antique or a regular, if you do work on it and you put it back together again, but you haven't, finished it, and you leave some of these things not working and not proper, that's what it would be. That's what a CO catches. When you're doing work, it catches whether you've finished it properly. And so, having finished it properly and at other times not, I kind of know what I'm talking about. So I do think it's something to look into at least.
Okay. Anything else on this issue? I was going to go to, if it's okay, Steve, I was going to go to somebody who has their hand up in the public.
Yeah, there's Kathy Baird.
Yep.
You
Go
there?
ahead, Kathy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, just 2 quick questions. One is, if you have a house that was built after 72 and you need to get a copy of your CO, how do you get it? And then the second question is, are other rental properties like month-long rentals or year-round rental properties also required to have inspections in the CO as well?
Well, the first question, would that be?
I was going to say, let's have Roberto answer that question.
The COs, if your property has one, is available at the building department. They have them in Energov, and they can print one out for you. The second question is for long-term rentals. That's actually been the biggest issue we've been running into as part of the health department for years now. Long-term rentals do not, theoretically by law, they need to have their CO, but our inspections are complaint-based. So unless someone complains about a property and requests us to do the inspection, we'll never know. That's been our biggest fight since the very beginning. I would argue that moving into the future, once STR program is up and running and everything like that, we can look into an LTR program to get that sort of thing, but that's years down the road. Right now, it's still complaint-based. When we do find issues, we absolutely address them. But we need to be allowed onto the property and into the building in order for us to address it.
Thank you. Do you have something?
I mean, that is something that I've always kind of said when we've had these discussions in regard to rentals, is that the reality of the situation is most short-term rentals are very well managed by the owners in terms of things being up to code and smoke detectors and so forth, because they're catering to a vacation market. Where we have a lot more safety concerns with long-term rentals in terms of, there are so many houses that I've been into that all the smoke detectors are down and nobody's paying any attention because they're rented and you might rent it to the same person for a decade. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I do think that that's a really important discussion if our real community concern is safety and welfare of our residents.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I have one of my own smoke detectors taken off in the kitchen because I cook with a lot of oil.
Yeah, Charity, you could come up.
The employees used to take them down as soon as I put new batteries in. They used to take them down to take the batteries for their Walkman and their stuff. So we couldn't bring the batteries fast enough because they were using them. So
Their Walkman?
man, that tells you how long I've been renting.
Charity, go ahead.
One point on this is, that you might want to think about doing is asking on the application whether there are any outstanding building permits. And that would be some way that you could get at this. Another thing that some homeowners may not know is that if you do not have a CO and you have a terrible claim, they don't have to pay it. And I think if you made that quite clear, apparently the house out in Tom Nevers did not have a CO when it burned. And I was told when I've been told before that if you do not have a CO and the insurance company asks to see it, you may not get compensated. So that, I think, is an incentive for everybody to get one. I wanted to ask through Mr. Giorgio, possibly, what about people who do not go through the short-term rental registration process and do have these, they might advertise in their hometown newspaper that they have a house on Nantucket and they do not go through the short-term rental process? Is there anything that's going to happen in that situation?
Yeah, I think that's in the Granicus memo. Are we going over that, Libby?
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just gonna say, John can certainly respond to that, but I think that's part of why we're hiring Granicus, because they're going to mine wherever they can for all short-term rentals, and there's a number of ways to do that.
Depending, Mr. Chairman, on the outcome of the Attorney General's review of the bylaw, in that situation, you'll send a letter and you'll demand a $5,000 civil penalty from the individual who did not register their property.
And that's per day, correct, John?
Yes.
So that's hefty, but it depends on other people notifying the Board of Health on this, right?
You have to find out about it. But Granicus is going to, as Libby said, that's a significant chunk of the contract with Granicus is looking at online hosting platforms and making sure that everyone who's advertising the rental is in fact registered.
Is it, I don't have it in front of me, is it in there where the next 2 or 3 platforms that we don't know about that comes out next year, are they jumping on those platforms and mining those as well? Does it say that, Brooke?
It says that in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we'll always be catching up to the next thing.
And also it would be a basis for denial of a permit, a certificate of registration if they have been operating without the proper registration certificate. That would be a grounds for denial.
Any other questions from the select board?
Carrie's got his name.
Yeah, this is, again, I don't expect, I'm sorry, it's Carrie speaking.
Go ahead.
I don't expect an answer, but, again, we have out in Nantucket, we have the Tristram's property, the interval timeshares, whatever. In a situation like that, is it the owner who is choosing to rent out their weeks for a short-term rental have to get the certificate, or is it the house in general? And again, it may not be up to today, but I want it to kind of be addressed because I can tell you that it is happening.
It's a good question.
So the section 0.03 of the regulations on the first page requires the operator to obtain the certificate of registration.
Okay, so the operator.
That could be, in many cases, that is going to be the owner of the property. It's not going to be the hosting platform. But certainly if someone hires a company to manage the short-term rental on their behalf, then that individual would likely be an operator as well.
Okay, but that's, so let's take a house that has 15 shares. Some are 3 weeks, some are 4 weeks. And two of the owners, so two of the 15 owners are using it for short-term rentals. The other 13 do not. Is the operator the owner who posts the weeks as available for rental, or is the house there is no one owner per se, there's these 15 people?
No, these regulations are geared towards the operator, not the house itself.
Okay, and that's up to.
So I would say in that circumstance, if two of the fractional share owners are doing a short-term rental without registering it, they're in violation of the bylaw and the regulations and could be fined.
Okay, thank you, because it's going to come up. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's a good question.
That's it. Yeah, it's Matt. It's an interesting thing to think about, because now there's, there are entities that are, you can buy 20% of a house, and then, and we'll manage it and we'll rent it, and you can buy 20% and look at the value you're going to get. I mean, that's some of the models that are happening now. And so the question really, we have to really think about, which I hadn't thought about looking at this. I'm just thinking one owner, one house. I hadn't thought about, and is the operator running it for two people, or two, and then he only applies once, or if he's running it for, if Brooke and I own 20% each, does the operator have to represent both of us in those cases? Like there's things like that we should really think through, because, you don't want to leave any sort of loopholes. If we leave loopholes, people, even when we think we don't leave them, they're going to find them. But
so through you to John, the whole point of this is having a bylaw that's fairly nimble in terms of being able to change it without going to town meeting if we find a loophole that we haven't addressed, right? That we will be able to amend these regulations fairly quickly. That's correct.
Okay. That's correct. But I think the intent of these regulations, to Matt's example, is if it is a short-term rental, and there are, let's say, 2 or 3 fractional owners decide they want to rent their house on a short-term rental basis, they would each have to register that unit.
should we move on? We've got a pretty long agenda.
Yeah. Steve, anything from your board?
Does anybody else have any other questions before we close our section? No? Well, can I get a motion to close the section of the Board of Health meeting?
Second to motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Carrie says aye.
Jim said aye.
Aye.
And Steve Disco says aye. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone from the Board of Health for coming tonight.
So, Mr. Chair, just as a follow-up, maybe what staff will do with town council is take this Granicus document and we'll just come up with wording and put it like in a comment on the side. And when it gets to the public hearing, you all can figure out if you want to add it or not. So we don't have a date yet for the public hearing, but we'll work on this and probably sometime in September. I think we do have to do 3 weeks of advertising, so there's a bit of a lead time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Roberto. We're going to move on to Citizen Department Committee request. So this is the applicant introduction, review of applicants, and appointments to the Agricultural Commission, Contract Review Committee, Council for Human Services, Finance Committee, HCC, Associate, and Zoning Board of Appeals alternate, sorry. And, yeah.
May I make a motion to approve all the appointees where there's only one applicant or there are more more seats than applicants.
So that would
That
be
we
everything
approve.
except
Second.
the finance committee, because on the Council for Human Services, is it?
Ms. Ramirez
Ms. Ramirez, she.
withdrew.
Was it?
Yeah.
Ramirez, they removed their application yesterday. So that one would be voted through. So it only would be finance committee that we'd vote on afterwards. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you everyone for applying, and congratulations. So finance committee, you have your little messages to the right here. Little pieces of paper. We have Stephen Morey, Jeremy Bloomer, and Joe Wright here. If anybody would like this, do we want to hear from them, or are we just voting?
If they're here.
Yeah.
If they can.
Yeah, Dawn's ready to vote over here, so I thought maybe I was jumping the gun. If anybody would like to speak, they can. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Bloomer for the Finance Committee. And by the way, I have a house. It was built in 1800. We do have a CO. So at
good to know.
15
Thank you.
Gardner Street.
It is possible.
Yes, it is. And I have, I recall that it was a lot of work, but it is possible to get done. I'm interested in joining the Finance Committee. I've been in finance my whole career as really an entrepreneur. So I have built from scratch an investment bank, an insurance company, a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. And I've also pivoted into the biotech world, some of it in philanthropy, organizing many universities to do cancer research in some really novel fashions. And I continue to pursue many projects, sitting on a number of boards, and also helping to grow different biotech companies. I've lived full-time in Nantucket with my family for about the last 6 years. We've owned our house about 20 years, been coming here for 35 plus years. And I am semi-retired, sit on a number of boards, as I mentioned, but I do have time. And I think I have expertise in many, many markets. I certainly understand process, not just analytics, and have, as I mentioned, built many things from scratch and managed many people. And so I would be delighted to give my time, since I live here full time now, to the Finance Committee. And we're delighted to answer any questions if you might have any. Or it's been a long evening, and I don't have the fireworks that we've seen elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay.
Joe?
Just a question. We do have another seat that's opening, right?
Yes, that's coming another month. Yeah.
My name is Joe Wright. I've been coming to Nantucket since 1948. Since then, I have missed 5 years being here. I moved to Nantucket full-time in October of last year. We've owned a house in Scottsett since 1992. My wife of 54 years and I view Nantucket as our home. We've lived together in New York and Geneva, back in New York, and then in Toronto for 46 years. I had 23 years with Citibank, 8 years with an investment bank, 2 years running the Swiss bank in Canada. And I have 15 years of governance experience. Was on the board of Loblaw Companies, which is the largest food retailer in Canada and has the most retail sales of any company in the country. So I have lots of governance experience. I'm a financial person. I'm treasurer of the Scottsett Chapel. I'm on the Community Foundation board. And for better or for worse, I'm a wharf rat. And this is my home. I'm retired. My daughter, Amanda Wright, is the clinical director of Fairwinds, works for Jason.
Thank you. I was going to disclose that later, but thank you.
I think it would be fun. I think I could make a contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We go to Stephen Morey.
Any questions?
Am I live?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
My camera doesn't seem to be on. Anyway, Jason, thank you. And thank you, board, for hearing me. Those are two impressive resumes that you just heard. It sounds like the town's going to be in good hands, no matter what decision you make here tonight. I would ask for your consideration for another appointment. This would be my 4th term. I am currently the longest tenured member of the Finance Committee. I think I bring a lot of knowledge and experience about the town and its operations. I'm still also the youngest member of the Finance Committee, so I think I bring a certain perspective that needs a voice. A lot of my peers are in the throes, a lot of the community, but certainly a lot of my peers are in the throes of the housing crisis, and I'm a small business owner on the island, and I think those are voices that should be heard at the Finance Committee level and elsewhere. So I'd ask for your consideration, and thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. This isn't really a question, Melanie. Our main concern is for Finance Committee, January, February, March are the hot months of Finance Committee. So it's which is the time to travel. So that's the only thing of anybody who's applying, make sure that they're here those months. Okay. Anything else? We ready to vote? Okay. Yes, and my full disclosure again is Mr. Wright's daughter I work with at Fairwinds, hand in hand. And please write your name on it as well, so I can hand these in to Libby.
I'm going that way.
Yeah, I'll just read them off. Whose is that? Is that yours? Okay. So Don voted for Stephen Morey. Matt voted for Jeremy Bloomer. Brooke voted for Joe Wright. And I voted for Stephen Morey. So it's 2 votes for Stephen, 1 for Joe, and 1 for Jeremy. So it's Stephen Morey is in for a 4th term. And there is one more round for this. Can you remind me again
There's a seat open.
when that is? It was an announcement.
The deadline is August 26th, so if the applicants not appointed tonight want to keep their names in, we can just let us know. We can do that. Names to be read on September 7th and September 14th, appointments on the 21st of September.
Okay. So if you want to keep your names in, you can. And there's one more seat coming in September. Okay. All right, number 2, Cisco Brewery and Bartlett's Farm request for extension of hours for music and alcoholic beverage service on August 24th. I think
I'm gonna abstain. I would do business with both.
Okay. Recuse or yeah. Okay. Any questions? We do this every year.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Thank you. I don't know if that's the 3rd or 4th or 5th year we've done that. And I believe we have received no complaints. Right, second one, Nantucket Land Council request for temporary shell fishing exclusion zone closure near 5th Bend on Code 2.
They wanted to, I had put my hand up and they were calling on me.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Let me just get through this one. Hold on one second.
Kathy, she needs to mute.
Near 5th Bend on Code 2 for you. Can you mute? You do it from your side. So I'll get back to it in 1 second. What's that? Brooke?
No, good. It's done.
Okay, Nantucket Land Council, request for temporary shellfish exclusion zone near 5th Bend on Code 2 for eelgrass restoration project. Is anybody walking us through this, or is it self-explanatory? Emily's here. Any questions?
Move approval.
Yeah. I've second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, Emily. Sorry, so I thought Kathy's hand was up. I thought it was just left up from the Board of Health discussion.
Was it inadvertent?
Yeah, okay. All right, Town Clerk, request, you just want to come up and just walk us through this, Nancy? We have A, B, and C. The first one is request for approval of warrant for September 6th.
Yes, thank you. This is the fairly routine biannual approval of the warrant for the state primary. I think it's pretty self-explanatory and routine. And secondly is, third, I put it in there, is the approval for the annual approval for the election workers, which is also fairly routine. And then the second item there is just as a result of the new Votes Act that the Senate passed in July, just that reverted the authority to appoint police officers at polling locations to the select board. And if you had a chance to look at my letter, most city and town clerks are asking their select boards or town councils or mayors to put that authority and planning back with the police chief, who would know who he has. And so I made a similar request in the motion there, and I would recommend that the board approve that and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Nancy? Libya, can we just do all three of these, A, B, and C, one full swing? Okay.
Move approval of all three?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Number 5, Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee quarterly report. Is that Vince and Mary? Vince, you going to start us off? Okay.
Thank you. My usual question, volume issues okay?
Yeah.
Thanks. So Vince Murphy, Coastal Resilience Coordinator in the Natural Resources Department. I'll be as brief as I can. There's a little bit to get through in this. The committee had a busy quarter for their second quarter. One of the biggest highlights of the quarter was that we started working with a lady by the name of Carolina Marginez. She's the Sustainability Program Manager with New England Developments, who own Nantucket Island Resorts. In fact, I met with her personally on island here Tuesday morning. They're looking to develop their sustainability initiative for all their properties around New England, specifically with us here in Nantucket. She has attended a few crack meetings now at this point, and we're trying to give her some pointers, keep her in the loop with the Coastal Resilience Plan, and keep their properties and the town lands on the same par. So just to go through some of the CRP activities to show what happened. In April, the committee had a special meeting to hear a presentation with consultants from Woods Hole Group, along with representatives from the Trustees of Reservations and the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, who hired Woods Hole Group to undertake work on Co2 and Cascada Pond. And the whole over, this is in related to CRP recommendation 3.4 for the mitigation and dune restoration in that area. I think it was also in April, with special help from Libby, and thank you to Libby for this one, we set up the...
You actually can put people back into the attendees. I'm not sure how to do that, though.
What's that?
Go ahead, Vincent. Yeah.
Thank you. We set up the Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Interdepartmental Working Group, and that fulfilled recommendation 1.5, and that is going to continue. We also started up with recommendation 1.4 for the locally adopted sea level rise scenarios for best available flood hazard data. The committee is going to update the recommendation that was adopted pretty much this time 2 years ago. The recommendation is going to stay the same. The supporting information is just all that's going to be updated. You can expect that before this board within the next while. So this 3 points show the parts of the CRP that are moving forward, and the committee is committed to implementation of the CRP. To also further support that, we're going to talk a little bit about grant applications. the committee made the downtown neighborhood flood barrier phase 1 project a priority, and to fulfill that, in this quarter, in June 6th, I think it was, we, together with the committee and with assistance from Arcadis, we submitted a grant application to the Office of CZM Coastal Zone Management that we shall find out about in the next couple of weeks. Natural Resources Department, with also with assistance from the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, undertook another grant application for Pulpus Road. And this is also related to a CRP project at Sacajah Pond for raising Pulpus Road's culvert expansion and wave attenuation at Sacajah Pond. That's recommendation 4.2. The next piece to talk about isn't exactly the best news from the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, but it shows that the committee is committed to trying moving forward with things. The committee and I worked on an application to FEMA for direct technical assistance. We qualified as a community, as a rural community, but unfortunately we were turned down. I got some very good feedback, and we might try to apply for that one again. We also, the committee also undertook an application along with me for what's called a NIFWIF grant, my favorite acronym of the year, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. We also were not successful with that, but we're looking to re-up that one for next year as well. We've also developed quite a good narrative for that project, and that might not go for NIFWIF, it might go for something else as well.
Were those grants just like outside the scope? Are we not big enough?
For the NIFWIF grant, we were just not big enough, not even close. That one in particular, they wanted us to not only just partner with other organizations on Nantucket, but also with Martha's Vineyard and other communities potentially on the Cape as well. They wanted to group it into one very large initiative. For the direct technical assistance one from FEMA, the problem there is the part of the feedback was that we might be too wealthy of a community. It's meant for much more disadvantaged communities. We qualified as a rural community, so there's no issue there, but we just don't have the need that some of the places that they're really aiming this at. So it is what it is. With your permission now, Jason, I think Mary wants to discuss the recommendations and request section.
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Jason. Mary Longacre, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. And before I get to the requests and recommendations, I just want to extend a thank you to Vince, to the town staff, to the Arcadis Consulting Group, to all of the other organizations that are pursuing grants for coastal resilience, and to all the organizations that provided letters of support for those grants. There really was a tremendous community effort to put these applications in, and fingers crossed that we do come back with the grant that we've applied for the downtown neighborhood flood barrier. Regarding the requests and recommendations, when it is the next opportunity for the select board to review their goals and their strategies, we do hope that they will include the recommendations of the Coastal Resilience Plan in the environmental section of the select board strategic plan. We also would like to recommend that the town pursue some of the things that were designated as Just Do It projects from the design thinking workshop that was held in March. And of course, if there are any current or upcoming issues which the select board would like the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee to advise on, we would be happy to take those up. And thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions or comments?
I just appreciate all the good work everybody's doing in this regard, and the forward thinking and planning ahead, and particularly the seeking grants. And this is I think this group is doing an amazing job of forward thinking in a good way.
Yeah, I would agree, Brooke. I kind of was at the beginning of the BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and it's really hard as an advisory committee to be really robust as they are. And so I really appreciate it. I know all the hard work has to be from Vince and admin level, and then everybody who's involved. It's, it's hard to get that many volunteers in the community to come together and have a significant impact, especially from a newer advisory. So thank you, Mary, and everybody on the commission council.
Yeah, it's a good group, and I think they're committed to trying to figure this out. So I think they know how important it is.
Yeah, it's moving the needle.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll take that feedback back to the committee, and thank you for offering it.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Vince. Okay, we're moving on to, I believe, real estate. I'm sure I didn't miss anything. Real estate items. Ken, are you taking us through both of these for?
I am.
Lee Wheeler?
There are two real
I'm sorry.
estate articles, and they are basically identical.
Ken, can you hold on 1 second, Ken? Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
I missed a hand that went up from the public. Can we go to Kate?
Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief because I know you have a long agenda. I'm very appreciative of all the work that the CRAC does, but I do have a question as I listen to all the grants that are being applied for. I am wondering whether or not funding for a sediment transport study, which was also one of the top priorities of the Arcadis report, is in the works or not.
Yeah, Vince can answer that. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks. Yes, we're looking at the scoping for that at the moment. As far as I remember, Article 10 from town meeting had some money set aside for that, so we're progressing with it. I might be wrong; it might not be Article 10, but I know it was in the town meeting just passed in May.
So could I
Go ahead, Kate.
follow up? Yeah, I did look at that town meeting article, and that looked like that was money for sediment transport, but not for the kind of study that Arcadis was saying was necessary to really understand how sand is naturally accreting and eroding around the island. So I understand that there's money for actual transport and dredging, but the study itself I did not think was part of the town meeting budget, and that's what I was asking about.
Yeah. So it is within there, as far as I understand. It's part of the overall dredging strategy. You can't really do a good dredging strategy without a sediment transport study to understand where sediments are going and where you might have too much infill too quickly. If you did want to make an area passable for boat traffic and for navigation. So it, as far as I'm concerned, I'm progressing on that route.
So it might not say study in that article, but that's part of it. The funding can be put towards a study.
Unless I'm, yes.
Yeah, Libby's saying yes.
And is adequate for that, you're saying?
I'm not a budget guy, but
okay.
It looks good to me.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Sorry about that, Ken. I didn't see that hand up. And thank you, Maureen, for letting me know. Go ahead, Ken.
Not a problem. These two are basically identical requests, other than the street name and the individuals to who they go to. What we're before you tonight is to request approval and the execution of a purchase and sale agreement for each of the two properties separately, a quitclaim deed for each, and a settlement statement for the town-owned yard sale. One is known as Parcel V, Waverly Street, and the other is known as Parcel S, Vernon Street. They're on each side of the overall property, and they're going to two separate owners with respect to, because one is on one side and the other is on the other side. This conveyance was approved in 2010 by Article 77, but it has taken this long for it to come out of land court in order to be able to have the town own the property, so the town is in a position to be able to convey the properties. The size of the properties that is being conveyed is 7,400 square feet each. The price with respect to the properties is $3 a square foot, which is a recommendation by the assessor and which was approved unanimously by REAC at its meeting last week. And so it results in $22,200 plus legal fees and unpaid taxes coming forward to the town with respect to each property. I have also checked with Vince and the coastal resilience coordinator, and there are no issues as to coastal resilience with respect to these two transactions. The usual terms as to being used only for residential purposes and permanently restricting any further subdivision of the premises after it's combined with the existing real property. As I say, the documents have been reviewed by town council and have been unanimously recommended by the Real Estate Assessment Committee. So I look forward to your separate approvals for each of the two transactions, one with respect to Parcel 5 Vernon Street and the other with respect to Parcel V Waverly Street. There needs to be two separate motions with respect to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as to these two transactions.
Okay, for the first one, any questions or comments?
I just on the map, can someone just point where the 7,000 square feet is? I'm just,
On each side of the, when the map is that you see the parcel in the,
Yep.
in the middle, and the parcels are on each side, the right side and the left side, and the top part in the middle of the map there.
so they're the long skinny alongside of each?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
This is for parcel S. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. The next one, number 2, parcel V.
Approve, motion approved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is passed unanimously. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to open the public hearing to consider an application for a new annual all alcohol beverages club license for Great Harbor Yacht Club, located at 56 Union Street. And we have Marina to walk us through this. Or does anybody have any questions for Marina? Hi, Marina, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, hey, Steve. Steve, are you representing?
I am. I don't believe Amy Baxter is able to attend. So
Yeah, Marina's here in her.
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to let Marina
I'm
go
here
first.
too.
ahead, Marina.
Okay, so we have request for new liquor license application for Great Harbor Yacht Club to 56 Union Street. Presently, 56 Union Street has been licensed as a restaurant. In 2021, they surrendered the license and it was not renewed. And Great Harbor Yacht Club is applying for new license and it will be annual club, all alcohol. And currently they do not have any plans to add non-live or live entertainment, and it will be used, the former restaurant and patio space will be used for club members for social activities and passive recreation. And they went through the whole process back in March, asking to do alteration of premises, since 56 Union is adjacent to the premises of Great Harbor Yacht Club, but at ABCC request, it was asked to go through new liquor license process versus alteration of premises. So we didn't have any objections or we didn't have any issues with that request.
Thank you, Marina. This is a public hearing. Would anybody like to speak on this? Here or online? I'm not sure if Kate Shea, if your hand is still left up from the sediment transfer. Okay, it went down. Right.
I just have a comment. Was there any, or a question? During this process, was there any discussion by staff of the privatization of turning things from, public, to the public restaurants into private clubs? Was there any discussion of what the impact of that will be long-term on the island? That type of thing. Should that be a consideration? Was it a consideration?
My first thought, I'm looking at Libby, but my first thought is no. I didn't see anything come through, any emails.
No, I didn't either.
Marina, maybe?
No, we're not aware of any consideration.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is someone a lot smarter than me said that that's where we're heading. If you predict, you look at some of the places that are closed now, they will probably open and they'll be only open to their members and they'll charge a lot of money, and it'll happen to marinas and it will happen to restaurants and it will happen to other places. And if that is, so it's an interesting, and we don't have enough time tonight to delve into it, but I think from a policy standpoint, we really should be thinking about it, because I think Nantucket has always been open to everybody. It's been egalitarian. You stood in line, you waited. And I think that we're under a different pressure now. All these restaurants, a lot of the businesses are short-staffed. You could probably make a lot more money serving fewer people and charging them more, making them members. I mean, it's sort of, so anyway, I don't know, whether we insert ourselves here. This is a recommendation, but maybe we do at some point. I don't know. I'm concerned about the direction we're heading. I'm concerned that we're not going to have enough, restaurants to service the people who want to come and stay in the short-term rentals here and enjoy the island. I'm concerned that people that want to have boats are not going to be able to have their boats serviced, because the boat places are going to be bought by private individuals and it's going to be a private boat yard. I mean, I think that that's, is that something we can impact, and is it something we should be worried about?
I think it's something that we should talk about. For me, it doesn't weigh too much my decision for tonight because they're right there, they're next door. But what you're suggesting for the long term of where the island is going, definitely, I think it's a bigger policy discussion that we should have since we're still Brooke, the licensing board for now.
But I guess this is a John Giorgio question. Could we deny, if we wanted to, I'm not saying we will, but what is the legal basis to deny it turning into a private club? Or do we have any?
I'm sorry, Matt, what was that question?
Yeah, John, if we looked at this and said, we're worried about all these places that are public now, restaurants, marinas, et cetera, turning into private places, do we have any basis to deny them a liquor license, to deny them a business license if they're not going to serve the public?
Well, I think your liquor licenses, in order to grant them, they have to serve a public need. That's the standard under the licensing statutes. So if they're not serving a public need, you may be able to deny them.
Well, we have a lot of club already here existing, so it's not a new thing.
Yeah.
And we have a specific club licenses.
Right.
Well, I was going to say that if you're issuing them club licenses, that's a different story then.
Versus a private, a restaurant example.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So that's a little bit of a separate issue. Brooke?
Well, and is that what we're approving, is a club license?
Yes.
Here, okay. So.
Yep.
Correct.
I'd make a motion to approve this.
Would you like to make a motion to close the public hearing first?
Yes, I would close the public hearing first.
And I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the public hearing is closed. I didn't see any hands going up or anybody here wanted to speak on it. Any other discussion?
I just have the same overall concern in terms of looking at the future of Nantucket, that if there is a trend that we can get ahead of in the interest of our community, that we should do so. We should at least have the conversation about it and think about and research what is in our authority, policy-wise and legally, to manage access to amenities and resources for the general public versus private. It's something I've been rolling around in my head. I don't know the answer. I want to learn more.
Okay. We can put that as a future agenda item.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's another thing that's being driven by property values.
Yep.
You know, it's not viable to pay some of the prices and maintain them as sort of public, more family-friendly restaurants, unfortunately. But there may be some safeguards on it, I'm not sure.
It's worth a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I worry that with everything else on our plate, that this is something that will not be discussed at, in depth at any, and it will continue to happen. And there's a lot of these things that sort of smart people were predicting 10 or 20 years ago when they happened. And so I'm worried that, and I don't know what we can do about it, but I don't know. I wish we had anyway, I don't know. I wish we had a better way to deal with it.
Yeah.
We get overwhelmed, and then we don't, staff doesn't have time to do this, so.
Well, on this particular application, are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. Town manager's report.
Okay, we've got fourth quarter budget reports, and airport will go first. Thank you, Tom.
Good evening. Before I get into the details of the fourth quarter, I just want to acknowledge the work of our finance manager, Jamie Sansbury, and the finance department under Brian Turbot. It's amazing how many different pieces they have to put together to get to this type of report. We have a number of revenue sources, a number of grant funding, and all types of different things. So they do a great job. Another pretty good year for the airport. Revenues for 22 were at about 24.5 million, opposed to 15.7 over last year, against a budget of about 17.1 million. The majority of that was the price of fuel, and I'll go into some of that in just a second. The good news is the expenses were 15.4 million. While it's over the 9.5 from previous year, it's still under budget by about $2 million. So before we back everything out, the net earnings were about 9.1 million. And then as we apply things to the appropriate funds, it comes down to about 6.9 million. And the projected fund balance at the end of the year is about 7.1 million for the airport. So that's still doing pretty well. Now, a lot of that has to do with some of the funding we received from the federal government, both for fuel purchase and for salaries. But just a little snapshot, our total operations and employments were up 11% and 93% respectively. So what that indicates is that there's less operations per se, but there's more people on the airplanes. So that's kind of a good thing for everybody. I alluded to the price of fuel before, and just to give you a little idea, April through June went up from $2.70 a gallon in 21 to $5.89 in 22. So that's a $3.19 increase, or 118% increase in the cost of fuel. So that's where you can see some of these big numbers. But all in all, as I said, very well managed under Jamie and Brian, working with his folks. And again, another successful year for the airport. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
Yeah, and how are your projections when you take out the CARES money and the other money? You still think you're looking okay?
Yeah, we're
year?
showing, it basically drops down, Matt, to about the same as last year, about a $6 million net earnings. So yeah, this is just much stronger because of it, that's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Water Department is next. Thanks, Mark.
Good evening, guys. I'll be brief. As well as the airport, I'd like to thank Brian and his team and my admin staff at Wanna-Comment. A lot of work goes into this stuff, and I just get the beautiful report at the end. So it makes my job easy.
It makes you look really smart.
It does. Like the airport, we had another strong fourth quarter and another great year. Revenues in over 8 million for Wanna-Comment and Sconset combined. Right about the same revenue as last year. The difference was we're gaining over the last few years. More and more of our revenue is coming from water use fees or water bill. 85% of 22 was from the water use fee. 11% was from new connections. So we did a few less new connections in 22 than we did the previous year, but we still did a big amount. It was probably 148 or 149 new connections. The only thing that really was up was our utility. We were up 66,000 more in electrical costs. To run our pumps, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month. This time of year, a typical station behind us in the state forest is probably going to run $6,000 or $7,000 a month just for the power to run that pump. So when those fees go up, it puts it. We kind of budgeted for it and kind of thought it was coming, but again, we don't know if those are going to come down anytime soon. But that was about the only thing that really went up. Other things that went down, professional services decreased. A lot of other things decreased. Our repairs and maintenance, we're getting a good handle on those. So everything else was down. The only thing really up in expenses was utilities.
And those were all new. You put in a lot of new pumps, didn't they have?
We did.
More energy efficient and everything.
We got the most. We just put another new one in a couple months ago prior to the season. We've got the most efficient ones we can get.
And how much do you makes a big difference? Do you see?
It's probably 15 to 16, 2,000 a month difference if we would have had the older style pumps.
Mm-hmm.
So all the pumps have been changed. They're most efficient we can. So, and as you know, we're kind of looking at other sources of energy. to help run those pumps. Over the last few years, we're kind of seeing an increase in pumping of about 6% a year. So if you went from 20 to 21, about a 6% increase in pumping. From 21 to 22, about a 6% increase. So over like a 3-year span, we've increased our pumping by about 12%. It's still within our water withdrawal permits, still in safe ranges, but it is increasing. But other than that, we're in a very good place, and I'm fortunate to have the staff I have with me at Wanaconna.
Great. Questions?
No, I'm all set. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Sewer Director. Thanks, David.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I also want to take and say that Tom and Mark both, Brian's staff down there has been phenomenal, especially Maria. We work very closely with Maria and other staff members down there. She helps a lot to develop these reports that we have. We are also in a fairly good position as well. One of the things that you'll notice on the sewer revenues, which is just, it's had to do with a change in the naming, where it showed that there was a decrease in the sewer privilege fees, that we had changed that name. We had gone to the sewer capacity fees. So you'll see an increase in one, but a decrease in the other. That's just after the sewer regulations were adopted in 2020. That's where that big change comes from. The operating expenses were up slightly, and a lot of it had to do with salaries, but a lot of overtime, with having to take in, as Mark's having the issues with, is we're trying to maintain equipment that we cannot get replacements for or parts. That is really hindering a lot of what we do, and I believe what Mark does. Is to get brass nowadays, to get brass fittings and stuff like that is near impossible. And what once cost $30, $40 is costing $140, $160. So those numbers are jumping. And some of the lead times that we still see, someone will tell us, oh, it's going to be 18 months, maybe, or 2 years before you can get something. So we're having to work on older equipment just to keep the stuff running until we can get a replacement. So it's been tough as far as that goes for the past years. I'll go back to COVID, delivery and supplies. We're still waiting for our new generator for our new pump station. It's been 26 months, I think now we've been waiting for it. So we can't move forward with putting that station online until we get our generator. So that's been a lot of the biggest stuff that we're running into. Other than that, our flows have stayed fairly consistent going forward. Again, as Mark said, our utility costs went up about $94,000. So it's, again, electricity costs and just fuel, and just supplies in general. I mean, especially chemicals that we use. Citric acid is one of the biggest. We cannot get citric acid right now, except for out of Canada, and it's expensive to get. And we use that to clean our membranes to keep the plant running. So that's been a real issue with what we do and with what Mark does. And I same thing, I think, with the airport, trying to get fuel and everything. It's just everything's going through the roof. So,
David, I just assumed that it was more usage for the electricity for the pumps, but it's everything else.
It's everything else, and just trying to boat traffic or whatever like that, or just trying to get the trucks across the country to bring us stuff. Grinder pumps at one point in time for what we used in Shimo, the pumps were readily available, but they couldn't get the electrical cord made, and then it cost more money to get it made because it was being made somewhere else or with multiple different parts. So that's the challenges that we're running into these days. And I think anyone in any of the industries know that it's really affecting us. That's kind of the highlights of what's going on.
Any questions?
All set.
Thank you, David. Are you going to stay up there?
Yep, I'll stay up here for the next one. Again, thank you, David Gray, Sewer Director. I have with me tonight Ziad Carey from Environmental Partners Group and Frank Ayotte from Hazen and Sawyer, who is our town's OPM for the C Street Pump Station third force main, which last winter we started on the South Shore Road end. And this winter we're going to be starting in town. What this presentation tonight is going to bring up is some of the geotechnical stuff that we're going to be doing to take and protect the town and our construction and the homeowners to boot. So I'll let Ziad come up and explain what these instruments are and why we're going to do it and where we're going to be doing it. But the construction is going to start this winter, and it's going to be a long process, and it's going to be challenging. There's no two words about it. It's going to be a challenging process, but we'll get through it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ziad. So,
do you want us to ask questions as we go, or just at the end? Whatever you guys prefer.
Questions during, or yeah, sure.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Ziad Carey with Environmental Partners Group. Thanks, David. And also, we're starting actually on September 12th, so it's around the corner. All right, so quick update. It was a short season last, in May. We started on May 1st on South Shore Road. We put about 2,800 linear feet. It was a good progress. There was something else going on along the force main, which was the gravity sewer. So between May 1st and June 18th, I think we quit, right? So it was 2,800 feet, and then we ended up paving. It was a bit of learning curve at the beginning, people going in and out, but we got the hang of it. And we stopped at, about 2,800 feet away from the treatment plant. And then we're gonna come back on September 12th. Will be a crew there on South Shore Road, and the other crew will start downtown. There's also a piece of the gravity sewer that's still ongoing on South Shore Road. So that's with Weston and Sampson, different design engineer, and that will be ongoing along parallel to the force main. There's also the water main on South Shore Road, which is also done, will be done by the town, and that will be happening along the same time. Stormwater, we are upgrading the stormwater on South Shore Road and recreating the profile to just get rid of some of the low spots and some of the ponding areas on South Shore. The second crew on the force main will start downtown on September 12th, and the thought process is to start on Lily Street, Step Lane, and C Street. And we'll see how the progress goes. But along those stretches, so we're replacing all utilities, including water, drain, gravity sewer, and then obviously we're putting new force main in. Winter and spring of 2023 will kind of follow the same schedule. Basically, will be similar to what we've done here. We start middle of September, and then we shut down the end of May. Yes, correct, the end of May.
Yeah, I was curious, the limited stormwater, Lily Street, Center Street, Step Lane, C Street, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, you have some short, tight right of way, 12 to 14 feet. And within that 12, 14 feet, we're replacing gravity sewer, water, and then any storm drains that are in the way, we upgrade in those. So if we're going along the way, we hit a pipeline, a trunk line, or maybe a manhole, a catch basin, those will be upgraded or replaced. Correct. Next slide, please. So in the downtown, especially when you digging, you have excavation closer to the building, there is a risk that some of these, whether it's a foundation wall, it's any feature that is close to the alignment, could be damaged during construction. So we're going to implement something called the geotechnical instrumentations, and we'll talk about those in a bit. And there's multiple ways to do this. So in the contract document, the contractor is responsible to do a pre-construction survey, which is documenting existing conditions by means of videotaping and taking still photos of all these features along the alignment. So the contractor will do that. Resident engineer who's going to be overseeing the job will do that as well, just to document the existing conditions to make sure that nothing gets damaged during construction. And then there's a post-construction survey that's similarly done by video and photographs to also document the post-construction and compare to these photos and videos to pre-construction activities. And what we really focus on: foundation walls, decks, thresholds, any notable features like, private light poles, anything that is landscape, walls, anything of that nature. And then the second way of doing this would be structural monitoring points. So these gauges, we'll talk about them a bit later down. They're crack gauges that measure horizontal deflection and then obviously vertical deflection too. When you dig down 7 or 8 feet below grade, the earth has the tendency to move a little bit. So, and then conversely, when you backfill and you compact, there would be some rebound. So along the way between the C Street pump station all the way up to Pine Street and Silver Street, we identified about 100 of the locations that would have to be monitored. And of course, the closer to the excavation, the more we're going to look at. And we have the flexibility to go a little bit further. So if we feel like there's more than 100 that need to be monitored, we have that flexibility to do so. Just to give you an idea next slide, please. Yeah, these are basically crack gauges, and those are not like exact conditions, not specific conditions, but if you have a concrete wall that has exhibited some cracks along the way, this is what you put affix a gauge on it, and then basically you monitor that. It's a simple read. You do it as you're doing the work. We establish this up front. We have a baseline to determine what is the actual depth of the crack of the movement, and then during construction, those will be monitored on a regular basis. And there is a limiting threshold. So we say in the specification that anything that exceeds 1/4 of an inch, we'll have to do something about it, and then anything beyond that, you'll be a stop work. So there would be brick. These will go on brick. They will go on concrete. Will go on stone wall. Anything like that that has some crack on it. And next slide, please. There is a specific one. This is a different brand, but the lower one, it's a corner wall. So if there is a staircase adjacent to a wall, you put that at that 90-degree angle, and that would monitor the movement in that fashion as well. Same thing, different versions, and then of course they're pretty accurate. So you could measure something like in the neighborhood of 1/16 of an inch, all the way up to whatever the crack happens to be. On the structural monitoring points, usually these are just nails and markers that would monitor settlement. They're different from crack gauges. So if there is a situation where the ground had settled, or maybe a feature had settled, you have the benchmark, which is the initial elevation of that feature, and then during construction you'll continue to monitor that. If there is any settlement, you'll see it, and you'll obviously find out during construction. We talked about limiting thresholds, and then of course there's a point where we stop the work until we fix the situation. These are the structural monitoring points. There's really nothing crazy about them, just nails, PK nails, and survey points. They could go on walls, they could go on sidewalk, thresholds, staircase, but of course they'll have to go on private property, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next slide, please. So this is the area where we identified the need for the geotechnical instrumentation. Again, from C Street all the way up to Silver. These are highlighted. And the next slide identifies the specific addresses along the way. And those are exactly about 100 or 102. And like I mentioned, there's a flexibility to do more or even do less, for that matter. With that, the first slide that we showed, there was a flyer that we drafted along with the sewer department and the OPM. And the intent was to mail those flyers tomorrow, with your approval, of course, and then run them door to door and put them in mailboxes. And as construction continues and progresses, those things will be updated along the way. So in other words, we do it now. Let's say the instruments go in on Pine Street, for instance, and Pine Street construction doesn't happen until 2023. We'll continue to update the flyer and then make sure that people get it. So with that, obviously these things go on private property, so we need permission to access private property, and the thought process was to have somebody from our office along with the sewer department assist in accessing these properties, and then getting permission to install these instruments along these private properties. So the idea that the flyer will notify people first, and then once they're on board, the next step would be to install the instruments on private properties. I think that's it.
Thank you, Ziad. Any questions?
I think it's impressive the way you're monitoring. It's simple, but I wouldn't have thought of it.
It's very simple, but it's effective because again, the intent is to protect the property owners and make sure nothing happens.
Right. And you see it start to happen, you can stop and shore it up and do what you need to do. That's great. Yeah.
Just sitting here and thinking about it, I just remember when one of the force mains broke, and that's right after, once that was handled, we started thinking about a third one. And that was 4 or 5 years ago, 2017?
2018.
January 4th, 2018. How can we forget?
Right. So and we're just now here, what a process this is. And I think everybody's doing a great job. And it's a big project.
And that's what I pointed out at South Shore Road. That was the easy part. So
right.
I'd be lying to you if I sit here and say this is going to be an easy. It's going to be a lot of hard burn along the way, but we have a great group here with Hazen and Sawyer, Frank with the OPM, and then David and his crew, and everybody's supportive of this project, and we're working as a team here. So
I just know from the work that was done on C Street that David Gray did a really great job of trying to talk to all the neighbors and try to appease everyone as much as they could and try to give them heads up, and still not great, but at least if you're being heard and you're given a heads up, it feels a little better. So I really appreciate that we do a good job with that. Anybody else?
My only thought is that there are, businesses that have different access demands than homeowners. Churches, for instance, and just good communication around that as far in advance as possible, because then they need to reach out to the people who use their services or use their space, and communicate to a whole lot of other people about what to expect.
So the team is doing, we're talking about a public outreach with specific groups, and this will be ongoing. Actually starts this summer and then just before construction, just to make sure that people are on board.
Right. The different, Frankie had with Hazen and Sawyer, just the different neighborhood groups, the inns, the B&Bs, getting them all together, similar to the way we did some of the SHIMO work, having more of a community at either one of the schools or the community room, just to let people know periodically what's going on. And obviously people always have access to their homes. It's just going to take a lot of pre-planning when we start doing this construction. So, and it should be noted too that these geotechnical monitoring points is the belt and suspenders. Obviously, we want to go through this construction seamlessly and flawlessly, but This helps protect the homeowners and lets the engineers and the construction contractors be able to, anticipate and react in advance of something, dangerous happening. So, thank you.
Thanks.
One other thing that we're really fortunate to have is we're going to have boots on the ground the entire project. Someone from Ziad's team will be here on the island, living on the island during the project. We did that with the Shimo project, and that person will be available to any calls or concerns that come through, or anything that we get at our office, we'll pass on to them. It really worked out very good in the Shimo project, and hopefully this one will go just as smooth as that one did. But this is going to be a challenge, and we know that, so we're ready to go.
That's great. Had to have that consistency. So that one person there all the time talking to the same people.
Yeah, that's one thing that Ziad's team, he's already got his engineers all set up and who's going to be here. And we had a couple of them here during the South Shore Road one that we're able to talk to the residents. So that's important for me, especially. I don't want everyone showing up at my house to ask questions. We'll have somebody there to be able to speak to the residents as they need to. So well, that's all we had.
But thank you, David. Thank you, Ziad. Thanks, everyone. Anything else to the board or Libby on that? Okay, select board reports and comments. First, we'll go to reappointments of select board representatives to Audit Committee, Board of Health, BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Management, Energy Task Force, and Cannabis Advisory Committee. I'm happy to be on the Cannabis Advisory Committee. I used to be. I can take over that and audit. Take off two quick ones.
I would take Board of Health. I think with the short-term rental regulation conversation happening, we should have somebody actively.
Thank you.
I can do audit if someone hasn't taken it.
Yeah, it's fine. You might want BOEM, what we call it.
Yeah, I think I'm already on there, so.
Oh, you're already on there?
Yeah, I think we were both. Oh, there's two of us?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do BOEM and Cannabis Advisory Committee.
So that's it from Melissa's departure. And you will do county since she was the chair of that at your next county meeting in September.
Okay, we'll revote that. Madam Chair. Committee reports or comments?
Yeah, just one quick one. Well, two quick ones. I'm driving over tonight. I was a little late because of the traffic, and I was driving over and I was looking at all the broken sidewalks and the things we put up to hold up the telephone poles and everything else. And I just was thinking, I'm stuck in traffic. That's why I was late. And I'm thinking, boy, we are just under, it's sort of what you said earlier. We are under such pressure. There is so many people here for, and we use it so intensely. We use the island so intensely now that we really, things that were okay 10, 20 years ago are not okay now. And and we don't have the staff and the resources to keep up with it. It's a huge issue, and especially with no housing, how do we even hire people, even if we wanted to get all this work done? And so that was it just kind of struck me as I was sitting in traffic driving over. The other thing, and this goes along the same lines, is we received some emails today about the HDC and they can't have advisory committees. There's been a legal opinion that those advisory committees are no longer allowed. So they're gone. And that to me is further, I think we need to have a discussion of it. How do we bring them back? How do we, they do a lot of work, and there's a lot of people on the sign advisory and other committees that have done a lot of work over the years that, by fiat, they are out. And I think that we need to figure out how to do that. I feel like, I think the HDC has been slowly, it doesn't have the staff it used to have. It has staff, but they're doing other things too, and they're busier than they've ever been. So, here we are with short staff, and we have a bunch of volunteers, and we're saying, oh, sorry, we can't use your help anymore. I just think that we're heading down, and I know that isn't what we're trying to do, and that's why we need to have a conversation about it, but we're heading down a really bad path. I think, sort of our authenticity and the, sort of the signs and all those things, all those little things are what make Nantucket click. It makes it so special. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of that. So I hope that we can put that on the agenda. I've asked Libby for, how this came about, who requested it and why. I'd like to see all the emails leading up to it, because that's something that I would have thought would have come to us and we would have had some talk about it. There's plenty of things that are kind of sort of, the Nantucket way that maybe aren't 100% legal, but we do them. So anyway.
We can talk about it at a later time because of the hour, and John could probably elaborate if needed. It initiated through Plus with some issues as to open meeting law situations. It got traced back to the fact that the HDC does not actually have the authority in their enabling legislation to appoint these groups. But I believe there is a solution, and one of the John, you might want to just quickly weigh in. I think a potential quick solution is for the board to set up, authorize these committees.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can, Mr. Chair. So I've looked at this issue, and while my opinion was that the HDC itself does not have authority to appoint these advisory committees, it's clear that the select board does have that authority under the charter. And in fact, the select board has the exclusive authority to appoint advisory committees. So if you would like to see these continue, the simplest solution would be for the select board to appoint these advisory committees and make clear in the charge to those committees that their role is advisory in nature. I think that ultimately you may want to consider amending Chapter 124, at least with respect to the Sign Advisory Council, that, and 124 is the chapter on signs, that there be these Sign Advisory Council appointed by the Select Board to advise the HDC. So that would be my recommendation if that's the way you want to proceed.
John, could the select board appoint these in September? We could, whatever the process is of appointing, we could go through that and get these back online. And then also we'd have time to talk about the next town meeting.
Yes.
How we want to give it back to HDC, or at least we have time for that conversation of how best to do it.
You could do it in September, absolutely.
Okay.
And I want to, and that's fine. I want to discuss it. I also want to get their input, what's working and what's not working. Why did we even do this? And how do we, ensure, what was working, what wasn't working to make, because if you're advisory and you're making advice and they're ignoring it or they're not taking it or whatever, then what's the process? So we have to find out, is that happening? What's happening? Sort of, I would say, take the temperature of it, which a public hearing or two would help us do that.
Yeah, and I think if this takes a month or however long it takes, my understanding is Plus staff can still make recommendations and HDC can do, at least for the sign committee, until we select board figures it out, and then we could have another revamp in May at a charter level. Matt, on your first comment of how under-resourced we are, sidewalks are a great example, because the capital program committee, it's $1.2, $1.5 million we put to sidewalks each year.
Yeah.
And one, we can barely get it done. And two, it covers this tiny amount. And it's effective. It's one side of Main Street, or it's a little bit of South Water, and it's helpful. But that's 1 year at 1.2 million. And there's some years where we couldn't even use that. And I walk down Orange Street almost every day, and I look at things I have to step over, and I look at the sidewalks. But I know we can't get to that. We have to do another 3 miles of sidewalks, and we're never going to catch up. Back to what you're saying, Brooke. We grow way much. Our growth is more than 2.5% per year, and we can't keep up. And sidewalks is just a good visual example because everybody uses them. And
and homeowners fix them. and then the next people doing work on a house park on them for, the winter and they're ruined. Or people drive over them and they're ruined within the first winter. So there's that issue too. So the sidewalks are a great one because it really, it kind of highlights what we're up against. It really does.
Any other comments? Committee reports? Just a real quick one. We had our first meeting with Capital Program Committee with town administration and Finance Committee and Mr. Turbot, just to go over the SIP in the next 10 years. And also looked at, for coastal resiliency, what's on the docket for the next 10 years. And it's some big, big numbers, just to go right online with these resources. So it's last year, I think with the enterprise funds, town meeting approved 116 million. This year, we're probably 80 or 90. A lot of work has to happen where it's going to end up. So it's a minimum of 100 million a year. That's not coastal resiliency in the first tier of projects. So it's a little eye-opening to see what's in front of us. Not that I'm trying to beat the story line down of lack of resources. But even without coastal resiliency, it's, we're in the billions of dollars when you add coastal resiliency and everything else that has to happen capital-wise, which we can't catch up only through debt exclusions and capital exclusions and at increasing 2.5%, right? It doesn't help the operating and the pay and the compensation for staff. So there's some major policy issues that we'll continue to tackle. I'll try to get more updates on Capital Program Committee. We have I think a good schedule this year, and I'll try to do more updates, here at the end of the meeting, just to kind of keep everybody appraised of it all, because it's a lot.
Yeah, you should share the municipal revenue pamphlet I sent you, because we'll never catch up if what we're doing is putting us further behind every time. And so that's, so you have to understand what, when you're doing something, you have to understand what the impacts are and whether you're breaking even, losing money, or making money. If you're actually breaking even or making a little bit, then we'll catch up. But if what we're doing every time is costing us more money in the future, we'll never catch up. We're on a treadmill. So I think that's the most important thing. No matter what we increase 2.5 to 5, it doesn't matter if we're making policies that are costing more money. So
then you look at like the auxiliary building for police and fire, right? That's been talked about. It was $1 million, didn't pass. Now it was 3 million. And then now it's probably gonna be 4 or 5. It just keeps going up. So things that we know we really need them, we obviously can't pass them all in 1 year. But how do we understand that it's going to cost a lot more 2 years from now or 5 years from now? Not a lot of hopeful comments there for me.
No, it's
I'm
usually more positive.
So I'm going to interject with some positive news. The Affordable Housing Trust met this week, and there's just a lot of amazing work going on with the incredible financial support we've gotten from the voters in the last several years, and it's slow going, building housing and creating housing. It's slow going, and and we're also under the constraints of Chapter 40B. And I encourage everyone, I'm going to reiterate where we started when Tucker spoke, to come to or listen after the fact to the State of Housing workshop next week, because there's a lot to talk about. And it is complex, and I really encourage people. We're going to try to present it in a way that's as understandable out of something that is a pretty complex puzzle like municipal government in general. So thanks.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes.
Yes.